Here.
Commissioner Dunn.
Here.
Commissioner Hart. Commissioner Bremer. Commissioner Gilmetti.
Present.
Commissioner Guardino. Commissioner Inman.
Here.
Commissioner Waring.
Here.
First item on the agenda, item number 2, the resolution of necessity.
Yes, Commissioners. Under this item, this is an eminent domain appearance. Under eminent domain law, a property owner whose property is under condemnation consideration has the right to appear before the Commission to question 3 and only 3 issues. 1, whether public interest and necessity require the proposed project. 2, whether the proposed project is placed and located in a manner that is most compatible with the greatest public good and least private injury. And 3, whether the proposed project to be whether the property to be condemned is necessary to the proposed project. Could you please stop fooling around with the voice levels? The Commission neither determines the amount of compensation for the property rights to be acquired nor deal with any other issue than the 3 just stated. Government Code Section 7267.2 requires the Department to make an offer to purchase the property rights needed. The Department has made the required offer. The Department's property condemnation procedure includes review panel meetings to try to settle outstanding issues to which the property owner is invited. These meetings have been held. Code of Civil Procedure Section 1245.240 specifies 8 affirmative votes for Commission approval of a resolution of necessity. The Commission scheduled an appearance at the request of property owner Teresa Tuma. The property in question is flat and generally rectangular with 150 feet of frontage along US 101 and is 77,328 square feet in size, used for commercial purposes, namely a car dealership. Property is impacted by a $41 million interchange reconstruction project on US 101 in the city of Petaluma in Sonoma County. The Department needs approximately 21,549 square feet in fee and 1,948 square feet in temporary construction easement to construct a freeway on-ramp. Although the Department, at the request of a property owner, reduced the project to reduce the property acquisition from a full take to a partial acquisition, the property owner claims the project design leaves the property parcel useless and without visibility from US 101 and the Redwood Highway. I believe the presentation is going to be either made by Mark Weaver or the Deputy Dan McElhaney, and the property owner would then follow with their presentation.
Thank you, Stephen. Good morning. Do I have a microphone? Excellent. Good morning, Chair Tavalani. Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you, Stephen. This presentation is for the resolution of necessity for the Teresa F.R. Tuma 2009 Trust property in the city of Petaluma in Sonoma County in District 4, Caltrans District 4. I'm Dan McElhaney. I'm the Chief Deputy District Director for Caltrans District 4. I will refer to this property as the Tuma property. The project is located in the city of Petaluma on Route 101 in Sonoma County. 101 is the most heavily traveled route in the North Bay area, linking Marin and Sonoma counties with San Francisco and the South Bay area, continuing on to the Los Angeles Basin to the south, and 101 linking the Northern California coastal region with Oregon to the north. It is proposed to reconstruct the old Redwood Highway interchange located along Route 101 in the city of Petaluma. The purpose of the project is to provide congestion relief, safety enhancements, improved pedestrian and bicycle access, and improved air quality. The improvements would reduce traffic congestion on the local street system serving Old Redwood Highway, improve vehicle access to Route 101, and provide enhanced traffic circulation between the east side and west side of Petaluma. It is proposed that the existing bridge will be replaced with a 4-lane structure with bicycle lanes. Currently has 2 lanes and a 4-foot shoulder. It'll now have 4 lanes and 6-foot shoulders with pedestrian sidewalks to match more closely with the proposed improvements along Old Redwood Highway at the approaches to the bridge. The interchange ramps will be reconfigured to current design standards and enhanced with additional turning lanes, vehicle storage, and traffic operation systems improvements at the ramp and local street intersections. The ramp is currently 1 lane. It'll be 2 lanes with ramp metering geometrics in the improvement. The project is consistent with the city's general plan and is identified in the Metropolitan Transportation Commission Transportation 2035 plan for the San Francisco Bay Area as a regional improvement. The project was included for funding in Tax Measure M that was Sonoma County voter approved in 2004. With the passage of Measure M, the SCTA Board of Directors identified the project as one of their top priorities. The environmental assessment, final environmental impact report, was approved on August 30th, 2007, and environmental revalidation was approved on June 16th, 2010. Ms. Teresa Tuma is the owner of the subject parcel. This slide shows the existing right-of-way and the Tuma property outlined in blue. The proposed northbound on-ramp is shaded in green, and the proposed right-of-way limit is outlined in green. The property will be impacted due to the realignment of the northbound on-ramp to Route 101. The realigned ramp will enhance safety, provide congestion relief, and improve pedestrian and bicycle access. Currently, access to the Tuma property is an existing driveway not from Old Redwood Highway, but from Montero Way via North McDonald Boulevard in Old Redwood. This next slide shows a closer view of the Tuma property and the proposed project on-ramp in green. The existing property is 1.78 acres in size and is improved with the building structure as shown in yellow that is used by a commercial business called Showcase of Motorcars. All abutters' rights adjacent to state right-of-way were acquired in a final order of condemnation recorded June 22, 1955. 2 separate court cases in 1943 and 1994 have confirmed that the right to view visibility from the freeway is included in abutters' rights acquired. The proposed right-of-way limit is outlined in green, and the required fee acquisition of 0.49 acres is shaded in blue, so there's 1.28 acres remaining. Abutters' rights acquired previously by the state will be perpetuated along the new right-of-way. A 5-foot wide temporary construction easement of just 0.04 acres is needed and is shown in orange. This slide shows the width available within the proposed state right-of-way between the toe of slope and the 6-foot-high chain-link fence installed along the state right-of-way where the underground drainage systems and ditches will be constructed. The yellow areas within the proposed acquisition are for drainage systems. The gray represents needed slope areas. To minimize the proposed acquisition, the department looked at a retaining wall that would have required a guardrail, further obscuring visibility from the freeway to the property. Instead, the department steepened the side slopes to minimize impacts and did not add a retaining wall in the design. This is an aerial view of the Tuma property, aerial photograph view. This photo is taken from southbound Route 101, looking to the left towards the on-ramp and the Showcase of Motorcars building on the subject parcel. The on-ramp profile grade will be revised as the Old Redwood Highway Bridge is raised for vertical clearance standards, bridge widening, and due to current ramp and mainline geometric standards. This photo is taken from the northbound Route 101 off-ramp at the intersection with Old Redwood Highway, looking towards the Showcase of Motorcars building on the subject parcel. The mainline Route 101 bridge is to the left of this view. The Old Redwood Highway profile grade will be revised as the new overcrossing bridge is raised for Route 101 vertical clearance standards, and it'll be raised approximately 5 feet. In Ms. Tuma's first issue, she contends that the department's project will affect visibility to the parcel from northbound Route 101, southbound Route 101, and the northbound off-ramp from Route 101. The department's design minimizes right-of-way impacts to the property, including loss of visibility on the subject property, including shifting the right-of-way limit to avoid impacts to the existing building, steepening the ramp side slopes, in addition to dropping a maintenance access easement requirement. The department asserts any loss in visibility was addressed in eminent domain proceedings in 1955, with compensation being paid to the owner at that time. Abutters' rights were acquired from the subject property in 1955, as cited earlier. These abutters' rights include the right to visibility from Route 101. Ultimately, should the grantor contest this assertion, it will have to be addressed in further negotiations or court proceedings. Next, Ms. Tuma would like to mitigate the loss in visibility by installing an on-premise sign visible to Route 101, similar to other business signs in the vicinity of the old Redwood Highway interchange. The City of Petaluma Planning Department confirmed that Section 20-20.150 of their sign ordinance prohibits installation of new signs oriented to the freeway, including on-off ramps. A variance to the sign ordinance would need to be requested by the property owner and approved by the City Council. This is outside the purview of the department and is an issue between Ms. Tuma and the city. Next, Ms. Tuma contends that the remainder has inadequate area for vehicle display parking and emergency vehicle access. The loss of parking was considered in the appraisal and included in the offer of just compensation. Additionally, the City of Petaluma Fire Marshal reviewed the proposal for the proposed state right-of-way adjacent to the existing building and approved the proposal in a correspondence to the department dated April 12, 2012. These issues raised by the property owner relate to compensation and will be addressed either through continued negotiations or through eminent domain proceedings. In summary, the Tuma property resolution of necessity I'd like to add in summary that the department has demonstrated that public interest and necessity requires the proposed project, that the project is planned and located in a manner that will be most compatible with the greatest public good and the least private injury, that the property sought to be condemned is necessary for the proposed project, and that an offer of just compensation has been made to the owner of record in accordance with Government Code 7267.2. The department asks that you approve this resolution of necessity.
Now, Ms. Teresa Tuma.
Good morning. I want to first thank the commissioners for allowing me to speak this morning. Thank you for your time. Thank you. First off, I've been the owner of the property since 1994. The Showcase of Motor Cars has been in existence since 1984 with extreme high visibility from not only the northbound, the southbound, but the old Redwood overpass that goes through Petaluma. I want to first address a letter that was written to the board, a memorandum dated August 22nd, which I just received yesterday, in regard to the visibility. The first and most item on here is number 2. It says, the proposed project is planned or located in the manner that will be most compatible with the greatest public good. We know, obviously, the expansion of the freeway is for the greatest public good. However, it also says, with the least private injury. That would be us. We met with the board, with Caltrans, in regard to the visibility of this parcel. And they came up with a plan in May of 2012, which would mitigate some of the visibility problems. Instead of having a 14-foot retaining wall, they expanded the overpass a little bit further down, allowing for a retaining wall to go lower in both my property and the casino, the 101 casino next door, which will block their visibility completely as well. This wall that's 14 feet high is 14 feet on 3 sides of our property, which we paid a great deal of money for to be on the freeway. Another proposed question was asked at that meeting, what about the vibration and air problems that this retaining wall will cause to our building that's built quite many years ago? No one has addressed that problem. No one has hired a vibration specialist. We've now had to do that, and we're in the process of looking into what damages will occur to the foundation of this building. This retaining wall and embankment is only 15 feet from the front door of this building on 2 sides. No one has addressed that from Caltrans. No one has addressed the fact that the zone of influence on this building with building this retaining wall and embankment would have on the foundation of this property. And we are asking you to give us time to look into that, and or Caltrans to hire somebody to look into what effects this retaining wall, this 14 feet on 2 sides, will have on this building. In addition, it was brought up about the EVA easement from the fire marshal. When we called the fire marshal told us that you have to have 20 feet around the building in order to get there for access, not for anything but safety. They have to be able to have a fire truck go around the building and be able to get around all sides of the building. The proposed easement that Caltrans is taking leaves us short 5 feet on 2 sides of the building. When asked about that, they sent an email saying from the fire chief, do we need to do a variance or do we need to redraw our plan? Immediately it came back from the firehouse that, oh, it's okay, we'll just give you an easement. They failed to tell you that the easement will transfer to us as the property owners if we decide to put another building in the same location. Third, the sign. We asked, since this is for the good of Petaluma, the overpass, and the 101 freeway, about a visibility sign that will show us, because we're going to be now in a hole, because 14 feet over our building takes our property. Ours is a 1-story building at this particular point. It puts us into a hole. You will actually see the overpass going right over our building. You will not see our building from any sides of the freeway. We asked about this sign, and we were asked that we have to comply with the rules and regulations after the taking. What about now? We're in negotiations now. What about right now? We need to have some sort of assurance that we're going to be able to even use the building once the taking takes place, or have even some visibility from 101 or the old Redwood Highway. We have not given any assurance to that. Thirdly, we asked about, there was an article in the newspaper about the city of Petaluma not having enough funds to do the overpass, which would affect us directly. If the city of Petaluma does not have the funds to do the overpass, why would you be taking us at this particular time? No one has addressed that. City of Petaluma stated they did not have the funds, and when we called Caltrans, our rep, he said, oh no, they'll come up with the funds. Well, if they're taking our property, where is the funds? How come we can't see these funds? How come no one's showing us the funds to be able to purchase our property? I don't want our property to be purchased and then find out years down the line that they didn't have enough money to do the overpass and our property was purchased for no reason. Lastly, they made an acquisition to us. Yes, it's here. We received it. It's 1 year and 2 months old. And in here, they failed to calculate the before and after take of 25,000 square feet of building. So how, I ask, can they make a proposal to us to purchase this parcel or a partial parcel when they forgot to put 25,000 square feet and forgot to offer us payment on that 25,000 square feet? It's all here. And I have the site plan, the current site plan of what the property is and after the taking. And 25,000 square feet of building is missing off their proposal. So I ask the commissioners, please do not adopt this resolution at this time. Please take time to read the work that we have put together, and in order to allow this to be a proper take. I don't want us to be taken without the proper information given to the commissioners. Thank you.
Thank you. Have any questions, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dan, can you answer that question on securing the funds to build the overpass?
Well, I have with me Suzanne Smith, Sonoma County Transportation Authority, and we have been working with the city. This project has a co-op between the SCTA, Caltrans, and the city of Petaluma.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Suzanne Smith, Sonoma County Transportation Authority. Excuse me. We have a construction cooperative agreement between the SCTA and Caltrans to fully fund this project. We use a variety of sources, as you know is the norm in most of these projects. Local Measure M money from both our highway program and our local road program, as well as local commitment of redevelopment fees and mitigation, developer mitigation fees. We have a separate agreement then with the city of Petaluma indicating their commitment to us. So our commitment is to the department. We're committed to delivering this project. We are working with the city of Petaluma on exactly what color of money they will be allocating to us. That's part of our agreement with them. We are in deliberations with Department of Finance on the redevelopment side, but the city of Petaluma is also committed on the developer mitigation fee side as well. So at this point, we feel that the project is fully funded from the perspective of SCTA's commitment to Caltrans, and are supportive of the resolution of necessity, as is the city of Petaluma.
Thank you. Can you come back up? I have a question for you, Mrs. Chuma. The department, on my report here, it says the department's original design was for a full acquisition of your parcel. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. And they also said to you that it was up to me, that I made changes to allow for a partial, and that is not true. We didn't even know about the taking from Caltrans. We never were even given certified letters or anything. We heard about it from the 101 Casino. The 101 Casino wanted to purchase us and expand their business. And what happened was, when they got permits, and they were in the city of Petaluma getting permits, and they were allowed those permits, they were told that Caltrans was not going to allow that expansion because the freeway was going to run through our building and part of their parking lot. That's how we got notified. We've never made any request in writing or anything like that about them changing from running the freeway through our building to where it is now.
So you'd be happy with a full take of your property if you were compensated properly?
Well, no, I won't be, because there are so many mistakes in this compensation appraisal.
I don't want to get into compensation. That's not our role here. But I want to know whether you want a partial take or you want the full take of your property.
We want a partial take, but we also want, again, in May of 2012, they came up with a new design that would minimize the visibility damages. And when we had a meeting on it, they said, they came back the next day on an email and said, well, no, it's not going to do anything, so we're going to give you an easement back, a maintenance easement. How does that change our visibility? That doesn't help us with our visibility.
In my discussions with the department, this seems to be the only design that works that allows for a partial take. And
Well,
so
no,
you
they-
either like the design the way they've designed it and take a partial take, or your other choice is to have the department reappraise the property and take a full take.
Well, no, we don't want a full take. So why don't they go back to the May 12th design then? That was a least amount of injury to us. You could still see the building from the 101. You won't see all of it, but you'll still see some of it.
Well, let's see an answer from Mr. McElhaney.
Thank you, Commissioner. With the strong interest early and often through the discussions with the property owner to minimize impacts to the parcel, If we could go to, I have a slide regarding that geometric review on slide 19. The designers were asked to look at how to reduce impacts to visibility. With the overcrossing structure being widened and elevated for vertical clearance, that increases the profile on Redwood Highway, which increased the profile on the ramp as it proceeds to northbound 101. Looking at a possibility of lowering that profile actually moves the entrance to the ramp to the point where it has a number of issues. Number one, there would be property impacts to 2 new parcels that currently aren't impacted. The horizontal geometry entering the northbound ramp is such that vehicle speeds have to reduce, and then they would have to, as they enter the curve, and then they would have to accelerate. That was a concern of the designers. But more specifically, additional right-of-way requirements needed from Quality Inn and Midas due to retaining wall construction at the entrance of the ramps was a significant concern. The pedestrian activated signal will be needed at the crosswalk across the on-ramp entrance due to high vehicle speeds entering the on-ramp. And there were a number of other issues, but the goal of reducing the profile of the ramp to the point where we would be able to have a better view from the freeway was minimal. So the ramp profile change was less than a couple of feet, and so you'd still only be able to see the top of the building. If you recall the photo that I showed, the view from 101, which is, we could go to wrap up, just to go to slide number 8. Slide 8 is a view from southbound Route 101 towards the property. That's actually the median barrier in front of us, which shows where we are, and the new ramp profile with its 2-to-1 side slope and its super elevation leaves you where you can only see the roof of the building at this point on the interchange. But as you approach the interchange, and I know the property owner mentioned the possibility of a sign working with the City of Petaluma, there's still a view as you approach the interchange to some extent, but the ramp profile geometrics did not provide any significant change in that visibility from this point.
So the other design was only 2-foot difference than the design that's currently being proposed?
Yes, because you still have the vertical clearance at the bridge, and so you still got to be able to bring the ramp profile up Old Redwood Highway profile and transition down to the northbound freeway at that point, so you don't gain a lot in reduction of visibility. Versus here, this is existing ramp. There's basically unlimited view, and so it's a significant change regardless of the geometrics. The best design is what's being put forward because it reduces the impacts to the parcel as well as impacts to other parcels which currently aren't being impacted by the project.
Dan, do you have the slide that shows the after condition?
We did have a slide that tried to show what the profile would be, and I wanted to focus on this one. And with the ramp and the barrier, basically you can only see the roof of the Tuma property at this point on the inside lane. But again, we weren't focusing on visibility in regards to the needs of the property for the project.
So I guess that you don't have that slide.
No.
Commissioner Dutch?
Has there been any indication that the variance that would be needed from the City Council of Petaluma for a sign to give you more visibility would likely be denied? Is there any track record that they do not approve variances?
Well, what's happened is all the properties around here have signs to the freeway. When we purchased this property, we were asked if we could have a sign, and they said no, because our property comes right up to the overpass of the Old Redwood Highway and the 101. And they told us back then that that was enough visibility because this property
that a variance would not be likely approved?
I have the email if you'd like me to get it.
I'm asking the department, did they chat with the city?
Not to my knowledge, we specifically on behalf of the property owner, but the property owner could request it from the city. And for my reference, I had the extract from 20.150 in regards to the city's ordinance, and they have other signs, as the property owner mentioned, nearby. So the possibilities are good.
They denied it. I have an email from
Prior,
Caltrans.
I'm looking for the new, I'm looking based on the new project.
There's
here.
an email from Michael Callahan to the city, because we requested that, and the city of Petaluma denied us and said that we would have to get a variance, and most likely it will be denied. And I just find it unbelievable that if we're giving up our property for the best and the good of the city of Petaluma and Caltrans, where is our rights? Where do we get any help in being able to keep our business there and locate it there and be able to advertise it
Can you
there?
provide a copy of that letter of
Yes,
denial? to
I have it in my
Caltrans?
car. It's from Michael Callahan. It's via an email. And in addition, with the fire marshal only gives Caltrans the variance, the EVA variance of 15 feet. They will not give it to us if we decide to put the 47,000 square foot building that it was approved on that location. We are not given that variance. That variance is only given to Caltrans, which I find unbelievable. If we're giving up our property for the good of the public, with the least amount of hurt to us, then Caltrans and the city of Petaluma should be working with us to make us not whole. They'll never make us whole. Not with 3 sides of a visibility of a freeway. But we're just asking for their cooperation in helping us to maintain our business there without having to take us in a full take.
Question for the department. What about the 25,000 square foot building that Ms. Tuma is claiming that is not on the appraisal?
Yes, Commissioner, that may be an older issue. At this time, the design as planned does not impact any structures on Showcase of Motor Cars. This slide here shows the distances from the proposed chain link fence right-of-way line to the building that was discussed with City of Petaluma in the fire marshal and was approved in April by the fire marshal for clearances to the building. So ranging from 15 to 18 to 32 feet, right now we're not impacting the structures on the property. We've really done well to have the designers steepen the slopes, and the retaining wall is actually at the very end of the property. It's a MSE wall. It's a low impact construction type wall. It's more in regards to the adjacent property, since most of this property is along the proposed 2-to-1 or steeper slope. So we don't have any information on the 25,000 square feet building impact, and so that's not proposed as part of the project.
So, Mrs. Tuma, you claim that the 25,000 square foot building is going to get demolished?
No. Right now, currently, there's a 5,000 square foot building on here, and he talks about the acquisition that they made to me, the offer, that he says they made it in compliance to the code, Section 72672. He states it right in your letter to you, that they made us an offer to acquire this parcel. And in this offer they made us, they're lacking the 25, there's 47,900 square feet of building that could be built on this parcel, 3 stories high, with an underground parking. And
Plans or a building?
Plans to build. And in there, in this section 72672, which they make reference to you, they are telling you that they've made an actual offer to us based on this code. Well, the code clearly states it has to be in the before take and the after take, and it is not. They lacked 25,000 square feet on their proposal. So how can they make us an offer, a legitimate offer, which they're saying to the board they did, when they're lacking 25,000 feet of
When were
appraisal?
when were those plans drawn?
These were the updated plans that we just had drawn for you, so you could see exactly what we're talking about. Because right now in existence, there's 5,000 square feet. But the taking on the 7267 says they have to appraise the property and give us fair market value with the before, highest and best use, and the after and highest and best use. And that is not what's happened. And they're standing in front of you today saying to you that they made an offer to acquire the property in compliance with the government code, section 72672. And it is clearly not. And I don't know how you guys can base a resolution of an adaptation when you don't have the actual...
But the zoning doesn't change. The zoning is in place as a commercial property, and the fact that you have plans doesn't really change the use of the property. They're paying you for commercial value of your property, correct?
They're lacking 25,000 square feet of it. That was my point.
Mrs. Tooman, this is a compensation issue?
No, it's not.
Yes, it is. It's a compensation issue. The point that I was trying to get to earlier is a partial take versus a full take. And you're insisting that you want a partial take.
That's correct.
Okay, and I hope maybe Caltrans and Sonoma can get together and help you get your variance. They can't control that. But I've heard your arguments, and your arguments are basically compensation, and we can't deal with compensation on this commission.
Well, they're not, sir, because what about the variance? What about the zone of influence? What about the vibration of this construction around the building that's only 15 feet from the building? No one has addressed that.
It's all compensation. You can take that up with the courts.
That's compensation in regard to the safety of the structure?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I'd like to move the staff recommendation. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes, Glenn?
Mr. Chairman, with apologies, as I missed the testimony, I'll go ahead and abstain as I missed the testimony, and with apologies for arriving late.
All right, thank you.
Chair Cipollone, if I may, thank Ms. Tuma for her time today.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Approval of the minutes?
So moved.
All those in favor? Aye. Now we'll have the executive director's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a couple of items to report. Since our last meeting in June, staffing change, as I have corresponded with you, Maura Tomey, our deputy for the commission, has taken another opportunity to executive director with AMBAG, and we wish Maura the best. She could not be here with us today since she started her job on Monday, but I know that we'll have other opportunities to see her and wish her well. In the meantime, I've asked Stephen Mallard to step in and assume responsibilities for the Prop 1B program. So Stephen will be the primary contact for the Prop 1B program. He's ready for it, you can tell. And Commissioners, next item is the annual report. It's that time of the year again. We are required by legislation to submit our 2012 annual report to the legislature by mid-December. I have shared the outline with you and recommend your approval with one minor change under the executive summary, that the needs assessment be placed as item number 1 and then map 21 as not item number 2. With that change, I recommend your approval.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
So moved.
Okay, Commissioners, next item I was going to discuss was the recent evolvement of the federal earmarks. After talking to Director Dougherty, he's going to cover that, so I will defer to him. And the last item from my end is an update for you on the needs assessment, and I would like to have Susan Branson briefly kind of go over where we are with the efforts to date. Susan?
Okay. Commissioners, today I would like to provide you with a brief overview of the work that we've been conducting with regards to closing or identifying revenue options that if they were to be implemented, they would address the projected $296 billion 10-year funding shortfall that was identified in the 2011 statewide transportation needs assessment. At the first workshop we held in May, a work group consisting of a wide range of transportation stakeholders was formed. This work group developed a set of revenue principles that will form the foundation for the revenue sources and policy recommendations that will be presented in this report. The work group members agreed that the report will provide for a menu of revenue options to address the projected funding shortfall. The report will not provide projected revenue distribution recommendations by mode or application for system expansion, preservation, or management. The work group is in agreement that it is too preliminary to determine funding distribution at this time, and that it is likely that the revenue options will be distributed naturally through the legislative or other applicable processes. Commissioners, more than 26 revenue options for implementation at either the local, regional, state, or federal level have been identified. Smaller work groups were formed according to areas of expertise, and an analysis for each option was prepared to address revenue application, yield potential, implementation factors, and policy recommendations. The work group developed criteria to prioritize these revenue options. Using the criteria, we intend to highlight revenue options that were determined to be of higher priority in terms of reliability, keeping pace with inflation, a nexus between revenue generated and transportation usage, the scale of contribution, the flexibility of revenue use, broad agency applicability, and relevancy. The report will also highlight innovative project delivery methods and an appendix that we are referring to as a revenue options toolkit that will include all the revenue options along with policy recommendations for use at either a federal, state, regional, or local level. The report will include an economic analysis of not obtaining adequate funding and will also demonstrate how the transportation community is accountable for existing resources and has accomplished more with less through implementation of innovative delivery of projects as well as streamlining and reforming existing processes. The plan is to provide the Commission with a final draft for review and comment in December and a final report for Commission acceptance in January. Commission staff appreciates and would like to thank all the many transportation stakeholders who have and are continuing to work so hard to help the Commission in accomplishing this effort to address the projected 10-year funding shortfall. Commissioners, do you have any questions with this effort?
Yes.
I don't have a question, but I just want to say that you guys have done one heck of a job on this thing. You know, all the updates that we're getting, it's just, to me, it's just incredible, the amount of work and time that's been into this, and it shows.
Well, you know, Commissioners, I do want to let you know that I guess maybe it was last month, I had asked the transportation stakeholders that are helping in this effort to draft text regarding these, I think we're up to like 28 now, 28 or 29 revenue options, and everyone has worked so hard and put together, wonderful analysis with respect to these revenue options. So I appreciate it as well. Thank you. Commissioner Dunn.
Thank you very much for this. I would just caution once again, I know I'm going to sound like a broken record, but we've identified the problem, we're identifying solutions, and there's no strategy yet to bring our public along. And the public doesn't get it. Based on all the projects I'm seeing out there where freeways are free and they do not understand yet. So if we, as part of this, that whole, we have to think about how is the education of the public in not just here's your funding options,
Right.
but what that means to them, and on reforms and innovations that reduce the $300 billion gap to perhaps something else. So it has to be a total package, Susan, and I just keep hoping that at some point I get to see the stuff that really will excite me, because then I can really advocate for it, as opposed to, I know what the problem is, thanks for the menu of solutions, we got a lot of work yet to do.
And Commissioner Dunn, that's something that I'm equally concerned about, that if we just present a report with a laundry list of revenue options. So at the last work group meeting, we did discuss, I've sought out, expertise in the work group to help me with putting together in our report somewhere up front how we are as a transportation community accountable for the resources that we have, how we have already moved forward to do more with less, how we have made reforms, we are streamlining our processes, and then also together, there's the folks out in the room and that are helping, they have marketing expertise. And so I think that as we roll this out, we need to figure out a strategy for marketing this in the best light.
I would like to be part of that.
Okay.
Susan, I just want to thank you for jumping in here and carrying this very important work forward. I participated last week. Was it last week? Time flies when you're having fun. But I really want to thank all of those stakeholders that were there. To go to Commissioner Dunn's comment, I think we're still preaching to the choir, though.
That's right.
And I think that we need to reach out to our friends at the Auto Club and other folks that are kind of on the fringes of, and don't take that out of context, please, that doesn't sound right. But I think we really need to broaden the base. Clearly, we have the opportunity to create the future that we're all proud of. And if we don't do it, I'm afraid that for generations to follow us, they're going to regret the fact that we didn't really roll our sleeves up and do the heavy lifting. And, we're very careful to make sure that it's just a menu of opportunities. And I think the economic impact is so very important to all of our regions, given the tough times that we've all been through. But I think that we really do have to expand our base and get some non-traditional partners into the discussion early on about what our next steps are. And obviously there's political implications as well as the economic implications and the marketing. But I just want to encourage you and encourage everybody else who's here today to participate. We have a chance to really move forward. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Susan. Commissioners, one last item is location change for our October meeting. And I know the chair had really wanted to have the October meeting in Napa. Unfortunately, that's a really busy time of the year in Napa, and we could not get any hotel accommodations for the state rate of $84.
$840.
Yeah, probably double or triple that amount. So we are moving the October meeting to Sacramento, so I recommend your approval on the location change.
Will there be wine?
Maybe the chair can help there.
I don't even know if I'm going to ask for a vote on that, but in any event, that's what we'll do.
Good, because I would oppose.
So, Commissioners, I recommend that we go ahead and move the meeting to Sacramento.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
No?
Okay, Mr. Chair, that concludes my report.
Thank you. Item number 5, commission reports. Do we have any commission reports today? Yes, ma'am.
I'm happy to share that I was on vacation in Spain and Portugal when I missed the last commission meeting, but I did take a day out of vacation to have the privilege of meeting with Spanish transportation professionals to tour their L9 metro project, look at high-speed rail train station being built, and spent a whole day in transportation. It was fascinating. Here's the poor Spanish economy, 25% unemployment, and they're trying to move ahead with some of these major infrastructure projects. One of the most interesting things, and I know Jim Arp had shared pictures and all, but one of the most interesting things for me, the icon in Barcelona for Spain is La Sagrada Familia, this crazy Gaudi cathedral that is unbelievable. If you've ever been to Spain, it's a must-see site. And it is such an important Spanish icon. But the most interesting thing for me, I was 80 meters up inside this cathedral to see a guy wire because the high-speed rail tunnel is literally, the top of the high-speed rail tunnel is 16 centimeters from the foundation of this cathedral. And so they put talk about innovations, they put this guy wire 80 meters inside the cathedral so that the high-speed rail train has not yet started underneath this cathedral. If there's any vibration, they would be able to feel it on the computers that they monitor 24/7 in the bowels of the cathedral to protect this huge icon. Now, this is a cathedral that was started in 1900 and won't be completed till 2036. So it's in construction at all times. And again, think about Californians doing that kind of thing. A high-speed rail tunnel under a major icon. It was very revealing to me. And it again shows the uniqueness, the innovations, the design, the differences between some of our international countries compared to where we are in California. And I just wanted to share that with you because it was very revealing to me and was a great trip. So sorry I wasn't here, but learned a lot.
Thank you,
Mr. Chairman.
Any other reports? Thank you. We'll move on to item number 6. Commissioners meeting compensation. Are there any changes with anyone?
Move it. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Item number 7. I understand that the Deputy Secretary, Brian Kelly, is not here, but Brian Ennis is here.
Yes, good morning.
There he is.
Yes, I'm Brian Ennis, sitting in for Brian Kelly, who was unable to be here, and I wanted to take this time to brief the Commission on some of the efforts that are underway to implement the Governor's reorganization plan. And as the Commissioners know, the Governor proposed to basically split up or reorganize the Business, Transportation, and Housing Agency into 3 parts. We have our economic development programs, such as the Infrastructure Bank, going to the Governor's Office of Economic Development. Housing, real estate, banking oversight functions are going to a new agency called Consumer Business and Housing Agency. And what will be created with what's left is the Transportation Agency. One of the very important components of the transportation area restructuring proposal was to maintain full CTC independence. And that was in the Governor's plan, but as implemented by the legislature, that was really made explicit in AB 1458. That's legislation that basically says, notwithstanding the reorganization plan where CTC becomes part of agency, all the independent functions of the CTC that are outlined in statute would continue, and the CTC would have that important full independence to make all the important decisions you're making today. So what we're currently working on at agency is we're looking at the structure of the new transportation agency in terms of staffing in the Office of the Secretary. We're also looking at how we can create a vision for benefits that would accrue from a dedicated transportation agency. Better coordination between departments, more opportunities for efficiencies, that type of thing. So as this is coming together, we intend to certainly brief your executive director as we go, but also certainly invite any comments the commissioners might have, and happy to set up briefings as well as we go. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions that you may have? Thank you. Now we'll have item number 8, report from Caltrans, Director Malcolm Doherty.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. There are several things I'd like to provide an update on. Since we last met and had the opportunity to talk, we have I've had the pleasure of seeing Rick Land appointed as the Chief Deputy Director by Governor Brown, and that was announced on July 16th, so I was very happy to have him permanently appointed. He's a great resource to the department and has been a key member of the executive management team for a long time. Also, shortly after the last commission meeting, Tim Gubbins was appointed as the District 5 Director for Caltrans, which is the Central Coast. Tim Gubbins has worked for the department for 24 years, and he has, for the last 11 years, been the Deputy District Director for Program and Project Management, and Tim comes with a wealth of experience as well. So with that, I'd like to publicly thank Rachel Falsetti for going down to District 5 and filling in. I know it was a tough assignment, and she sucked it up and went down to the Central Coast for us. But she is back working here with the Commission, and at the same time, I'd like to thank Kurt Scherzinger for filling in for Rachel Falsetti while she was on loan. That we still have some positions that are acting capacities, and we are moving methodically through filling those positions, but I am going to announce another acting assignment. Our Division Chief for Engineering Services, who has been Jim Davis, is going to go back to his position, and Carla Sutliff is going to fill in until that position is permanently filled. That's the Chief of Environmental Services. And then Joe Caputo from District 3, who is their Project Management Chief, is going to come in and fill in for Carla Sutliff in the meantime, and again until those positions are permanently filled. Also, since we last met, MAP 21 was signed into law on July 6th. That seems like old news now, but we haven't talked about it in detail. So after 10 extensions, we have a 2-year bill, technically 27 months since they also filled the gap between the last 3 months of the federal fiscal year, $37.7 billion per year, essentially the same amount of funding to California as we move forward. It does include it does include a national freight policy and national freight network. And some other key elements of it is requiring performance measures and greater accountability as we move forward. And Stephen Keck will talk later today on the agenda in greater detail. I would like to note that we have formed a MAP 21 working group, including CalCog representatives, League of California Cities, and other interest groups. They met yesterday. They will be meeting in another 2 weeks. Primary purpose of that group is to identify issues, develop recommendations, and help draft state legislation as we go forward in implementing MAP 21. We will also engage a larger stakeholder meeting with a broader audience in early September. Another federal item, last Friday, FHWA, Federal Highway Administration, sent out a memo discussing unobligated earmarks from the era of about 2003 to 2006. Specific to California, this encompasses about 71 projects and $43 million. Essentially, what we're looking at in discussions with FHWA, and we'll be sending information out to our local entities and recipients of those earmarks momentarily. The opportunity that those funds are being required to be obligated by the end of the calendar year. So if they cannot be obligated to the projects that they are currently earmarked to by the end of the calendar year, FHWA is asking the state, and in turn we will ask our local partners what projects they want those dollars obligated to. The list of 71 projects and the unobligated amounts varies from over $3 million to 1 penny. And we have to provide a response to FHWA by October 1st as to what projects we want those unobligated balances to go to. Denix Anbia will speak a little bit more to this and likely Vince Mamano will also speak to this as well, but this occurred on Friday. There still may be a few questions, but our first tact and step would be to go back to the locals those earmarks went to, determine whether or not those earmarks can be obligated to those projects in that timeline, and then request what other projects they would like to see that money obligated to. And again, it has to be obligated by December 31st of 2012. Willits Bypass, brief update, had a very successful bid opening. Low bid was $108 million, was within 4% of the engineer's estimate. Very complicated project, 15 bridges, 1.1 mile long floodway viaduct, many permit conditions, and 1 million cubic yards of imported borrow on that project. But we were very happy to see that successful bid opening and moving forward with that project. The department did receive an audit on the 710 corridor specific to property management. And the 710 extension project and the property management. There's significant numbers of homes that the department manages and has managed for decades, working very closely with the California State Auditor. We've provided a response to address all the concerns that they've highlighted, and we're working very closely with Acting Agency Secretary Brian Kelly on how to address all those issues, specifically pertaining to property management, charging fair market value rent, as well as evaluating how we go forward with the management of those properties as well as the ownership of those properties in a very effective manner to address all the items that were brought up by the California Bureau of State Audits. More fun that we've had in the last couple of weeks. We also participated in a Senate Transportation Committee hearing on the San Francisco Bay Bridge. I'm happy to report the Bay Bridge is still safe. We answered as many questions as we possibly could and provided as much detail as we possibly could. There is still a request and a desire by the Transportation Committee, and specifically the chair, to have an independent peer review specific to the modeling. We will work with the commissioner, the committee staff, as well as the LAO who was there to and FHWA to try to resolve that request for information. Carmageddon 2 is coming to a theater near you on 405. That'll be September 29th to October 1st, closing 405 at 10 p.m. on September 29th and opening by 5 a.m. on October 1st. You should have gotten a hard copy of the program review document from myself. I'd be more than happy to sit down and discuss that further with each of you individually if you would like. As a brief update, we're working on as many as 25 white papers pertaining to process improvements, organizational improvements, delegations of authority, et cetera, throughout headquarters and the districts. We will be posting that list of white papers that are underway on our website, making that public not only to you but to our local partners, transportation stakeholders, and that will be an ongoing effort. We will retire some of those white papers, implement some of those ideas, as well as add to them as to what we want investigated, and I want to make sure that we add those white papers to our website so they can be highly visible. We've already completed, I believe, 7 of those white papers. We'll take action on those at our directors meeting, which we're calling the executive board next week for implementation. Some of those are changing organizational structures in districts and headquarters, as well as combining divisions, and I look forward to sharing that information with you as well. There's several items on your agenda today, 2 specific presentations, one on from our Division of Research and Innovation on innovation, and also project streamlining from our Division of Design. And then also we look forward to the your approval and allocation of the I-15 widening design build project near Devore. So with that, I will conclude my comments and be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Malcolm. I have a couple questions. Map 21, as you so graciously pointed out, paid a little bit of attention to freight. So I know that in our interregional blueprint, we have a focus on freight as well. But I want to make sure that our timing and as this collaborative effort comes forward, the intention of the freight in that, I believe, was to be multimodal. There's maybe not as much rail discussion in the MAP 21 as some of our rail partners would have liked. But I really want to encourage you, and also Brian, with the restructuring to make sure that whatever happens on the federal level, that we are at the table. Goods movement and our ports in California are so very important to the national supply chain. So I think that Secretary LaHood has a year to put together his freight plan, and I want to make sure that we're not just waiting to complete our freight plan next February. Meanwhile, a freight plan appears that doesn't put the focus that we would all like to collectively see on our West Coast deep water ports. So can we just make sure that, I don't know if it's going to require a subgroup, because there's some other stakeholders from the supply chain that wouldn't be with your other agency partners that are having the MAP 21 implementation discussions necessarily. So whether it's our partners at the ports, our rail partners, and all the other partners that participate in the global supply chain. Appreciate it.
Well, I very much appreciate your comments, and you're correct. The freight plan deadline is October 1st of 2013, and I do believe that we definitely will work very diligently through AASHTO and other entities to be at the table as that freight plan is being formulated, and I do envision that we'll have a task force in California with all those stakeholders to feed that effort back in Washington, D.C. to shape the freight plan on a federal stand.
Okay, thank you. And then on the Caltrans plan for the future, I know that we have that listed under a agenda item, and you'll be happy to know that I complained that it was all the way back at item number 64, because I think it's really our future discussions that we need to spend more time on. But just, I think it would be good to maybe sit with some of us and let us help as best we can. Generally speaking, I thought this was a little lean on action. And so perhaps these white papers are going to be those vehicles, but I know we're restructuring, and it probably, I would think, would all be integrated in what these solutions are. But the real eye-opener for us in Southern California was the SCS, where Hassan and our team at SCAG told us that 74 to 76% of our funding is coming from local sources. So, you know, it's a changing paradigm for all of us. So I think really to figure out how to best do that, it's important to have these discussions. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Malcolm. Now item number 9, FHWA Division Administrator Vince Mamano, please.
Good morning. I'm amazed that we went this far into this meeting and didn't acknowledge the Petaluma Little League baseball team that's got a shot at going all the way. So, way to go, Petaluma. Now, they are the Petaluma Nationals, and Nationals are D.C., and I'm from D.C. There could be a connection, I don't know.
Are you the coach?
No, but I'm willing to coach from the back.
5-0 shutout last night.
Did they? Right on, right on. It's a fun thing. It's a fun thing, and it's good to see that they mic all the coaches, so the coaches have to be good, except the foreign language speaking coaches, which I don't know what they're saying anyway. Although it was pretty funny when the guy got. If you're wondering what the coach just said, he said, "You're doing a great job," because the Japanese coach got in there and rambled off for 10 minutes, and he's pointing, and he's got his face like this, and he's doing all this, and then the announcer comes back and goes, "We've had that translated. He said, you're doing a great job, and keep it up." Yeah, right. That's what all that means. So MAP 21 is here. MAP 21, little ditty in that was that there's an extension to Safety Lou that got us to October 1, and then from October 1 for the next 2 years is MAP 21. So it gives us a few months to try and get everything set up for when MAP 21 hits. I'm going to go over just a few things on MAP 21. Our website, Federal Highway website, www.fhwa.dot.gov. Google us. There's a whole set of a page for just MAP 21, questions and answers, all of those types of things. So there's a lot of information, and it's happening very fast. One of the main commitments I think that our administrator has made to everybody, Victor Mendez, is that we're going to try and implement this as fast as we can. Some of the things are just flat out going to require regulation, which is going to take some time, but some of it can be done off of policy, and that's the sort of thing we're looking for in identifying any opportunity to accelerate and implement the stuff as soon as we can. As Malcolm talked about, it's about the same amount. It's about $3.5 billion for California. It gets a little bit higher in 14, but 13 and 14, it's about $3.5 billion. to California. There's a few areas that it does do. It takes us, like we said, to 2014. It limits the number of programs, or it reduces them from over 100 different programs down to around 20. So so much for me being able to play my little games with you people. Now I gotta be more open. Fine. But there's a lot of the stuff didn't go away. The eligibility didn't go away. There's a lot of discretionary programs that did go away. Ferry boat discretionary went away. Highways for Life. There's a lot of the discretionary programs went away. Their eligibility didn't go away. It's just separate dollars for those. So what it did is it put the decision on how it's going to work, what projects get moved, what areas get paid attention to, and it puts the decision at the state level. So whereas before federal government would tell you you needed to put so much in this area, so much in this program, so much in this program, now we're saying we're limiting it down to about 20 different programs, and it's your decision on kind of how that program, where you put that money. I think there's been a lot of comment on the bridge program went away. The bridge program went away. Well, the bridge program didn't go away. It's eligible under several different categories. It's just your decision on where you apply that money. There's some performance things in there, and there's some roundabout ways that the bridge program and some of those other programs are tied into that with the off-system bridge commitments that you need to make. But so there's different ways, but it doesn't mean that the things aren't eligible. So all the things that we're eligible for are primarily at a safety lieu. Just about everything is still eligible. It just might be done under a different pot. And it's essentially your decision on where that money goes. Just kind of running through it's broken down into a few different programs now. The program areas are the National Highway Performance Program, which a large part of that is expanding the National Highway System. So now the National Highway System is now going to be expanded into all the primary routes. So that is going to be, what used to be the National Highway System is now going to be expanded, so that's a big part of that. So you have the National Highway Performance Program, the Surface Transportation Program, the STP, Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality Improvement Program, Highway Safety Improvement Program, Rail Highway Crossing, Metropolitan Planning, the construction of ferry boat and ferry boat terminals, and there's a Transportation Alternatives Program, and that's a lot of your rec trail, safe routes to school, transportation enhancement, and those types of things. So there's different dollar amounts for some of those programs, and again, it primarily gets to the state on their eligibility and what they want to do with the money, the state and the locals. Hit a couple. The other area that the new legislation hits is TIFIA. TIFIA is a big expansion of that program. It's gone to $750 million in 13 to $1 billion in 14, which essentially will help you leverage about $17 billion worth of funding. So that's a huge increase to that program. Another one of the areas that it really hits is with the TIFIA, it used to be about 33%, I think, was the amount that was eligible. The total cost, now it's up to 49%. So that makes a big difference in that. The other area is tolling. So tolling has got some flexibility in it now. They've eliminated the requirement in some of the areas for the 129 agreement, which is our tolling agreement. So I think in some of it doesn't eliminate it for the pilot programs, but there are some programs out there where I think I've had some conversations with a lot of people here in the audience about, is the federal government going to give us that tolling agreement? Safety or MAP 21 erases some of that stuff of the requirement of a separate tolling agreement for that. So we're still getting our arms around that, but that's something to keep an eye out. And I'll as we get more information on that, I'll update you guys at future meetings. So there's a lot of those toll programs are still in play. The value pricing pilot program, the interstate system reconstruction rehabilitation pilot program, The emergency relief program has stayed about the same. One of the other areas was with the planning. In the planning side, there was some speculation that the sizing for MPOs and TMAs and all those types of things were going to change. Those all stayed the same. So essentially, the planning requirements out of MAP 21 stayed essentially the same. So those are the biggies out of MAP 21. It's a big focus on accelerating project delivery. Talks a lot about performance management. What that is we're going to be getting into performance measures. There's a lot of requirements on that. The states, AASHTO, all of the partners will be involved in that as that gets done at a national level. So a lot of that stuff will be done in regulation. But what that does, it's not a punishing, it's a limiting. So if say there's an issue here in California on one of the performance measures, it doesn't take that money away from you. That'd be kind of silly. But what it does is it restricts your flexibility to use some of your money somewhere else. So it's saying focus your money on these areas, meet your performance measures, and then use it where you can, where you want to. So it requires an implementation of a plan on how you're going to meet your performance measures. Don't know all the details in the performance measures, but those are the types of things that will be coming out here within the next 2 months, I think. So keep an eye on that website. It's a pretty good website. It's got a lot of information and updating on how that's getting implemented. National Freight Policy, Fran, I know you were talking about that. That's something that we're making a point of. We have that in our office. We now have our freight coordinator, a new freight coordinator in our office. She's going to be at the table at a national level. She's going to make sure that California is sitting at that table too. So that's a big issue for Federal Highway. Federal Highway Administration recognizes the impact and the magnitude that California carries in that area. So that's one of the areas that we're definitely going to make sure California is involved in. Earmark reallocation. Was there any questions on MAP 21? No? Good. No. Go ahead.
Thank you. I appreciate it. If you talked about TIFIA and the changes to that, bringing it up to $1 billion a year, I didn't hear it.
Yes.
Did you talk about it?
Yes. But that's okay. Yeah, it went up to $1 billion a year, $750 for 13,
Sorry,
and $1 billion.
I was on a chocolate chip cookie.
That'll happen. Don't blame yourself for that. I'm over here watching that cookie line go all the way across. I don't even know what. I think I talked about it. But we're going to make that happen. There we go. Now the funding can continue. So we've got that. See, if it's a weighted cookie, the arms extend. I reach all the way to the bottom of the pockets.
That's a big one.
Take a bite because that's $1 million a cookie.
It's yours. So yeah, the TIFIA program is huge. That's been a big issue. Is how can we leverage the federal dollars? Mm-hmm. So there's going to be a lot more to the TIFIA program. So keep your eyes out for that. But the funding, it's going to be a little bit more streamlined in your ability to get the funding. Like we said, it can be applied to a larger portion of the project, and it actually gets into some of the rural areas too. So it's not just the monster projects that get that.
Thank you. Yes, Commissioner.
Thanks, Vince. Great detail on MAP 21. Always trying to think ahead. MAP 21. 2 years? Are you kidding me? When do we start working on MAP 22?
They have already. Yeah, that's actually something that was commented that we've had, that it takes several years, obviously, to get that implemented. I heard that out of AASHTO, American Association of State Highway Transportation Officials had brought that up. So that they're already working on the next legislation. It's touted as the first long-term legislation since '05, but 2 years. I'm not disagreeing. It's the first we've had since '05 where we've had something that could give us at least a couple years of an idea of what's happening. But what I think the big message on this is the next generation of transportation authorization, performance measures, decisions at the local level, meet your performance measures, otherwise the limiting of the flexibility. So it's what I think the premise of the future legislations are going to be. So it's kind of that first step. So I actually don't disagree with a 2-year to that, because it's kind of let's take a couple steps in this new kind of how we're looking at it, and then now we can build on that. We can keep it going the same. We can do what we need to do based on what we've learned in those 2 years, I think. Yeah.
Hopefully more money then.
I just think we need to keep in mind, do a little shout out for Senator Boxer, who I think did some serious heavy lifting on this and made it possible. I'm not sure it would have happened without her, to be honest with you.
There was a lot of work that went into that. I thought it was there's a lot of influence in California. I will like to compliment Malcolm and his staff on that too. I know you as a commission had influence in what went in. But California's fingerprint is all over that. So there was a lot of input that California freight was a big push that came out of California. I know that Caltrans had a lot of influence in that area. The NEPA delegation, NEPA assignment is continuing. That's been expanded into other modes. That came right out of California. Other opportunities for other states to join in because they saw how it was working in California. So there's a lot of effort that went into it to make that happen with California. Any other MAP 21? I got a couple other things to carry, if that's all right. Malcolm talked about the earmarks. 2003, 4, 5, and 6. It was in the Appropriations Acts for 2003, 4, 5, and 6. Remember, our authorization is MAP 21, Safety Lou, all of those. But each year we have to get appropriations to go ahead and spend that money. The Appropriations Act for 2003, 4, 5, and 6 had notes in there that allowed the Secretary of Transportation to take those earmarks that were in there. If they're not spent, it's at his discretion to pull those out and apply them to Title 23 and Title 49 type activities. Title 49 is DOT-wide, and Title 23 is highways and transit. So what the Secretary did is he exercised that, and as Malcolm stated, it's about $43 million on about 71 projects, and it's great because if you look through it, there's a project that actually was, Malcolm said there's $3 million, and they've spent all the way down to a penny, but there's still a penny left on it. So I need that project closed out, which is another thing I want to talk to everybody over here about. If I can look at everybody over here, we are closing out projects. We are getting money off the books. If we have inactive obligations, we are leaning on Caltrans like there's no tomorrow. That's money that's sitting out there. There's a lot of people that are looking and saying, why are you asking for all this money when you got money sitting on your books? Inactive obligations, inactive projects, we've got to close those out. If they're over a year, it doesn't matter the dollar amount. We used to sit there and say, well, if it's under 200,000, if it's under 50, we had different numbers. We're putting the lien on everybody for everything. So hopefully all the locals out there right now are feeling that pressure from Caltrans. So Norma asked me to let you all know that it's me that's putting the lien on Norma to get Norma to put the lien on you. So we're looking for a lot of cooperation in that. We don't want anybody to tell us what else to do with it. So we want to get that money out so that it can be spent on the other projects. Those monies that are going for the for the earmarks, it's going to be Caltrans' decision on where California's decision on where that money gets spent. It all needs to be obligated by the end of this year. If an earmark can't be obligated by the end of this year, that money is going to go back into a California pot. California can decide where they want to put that money. If that money doesn't get spent, then that money goes into a national pot. And then whoever spent all their money or obligated all their money by the end of this calendar year, not fiscal year, so end of the calendar year, all the states that obligated their money by the end of the calendar year will have a shot at all the other states that didn't do it. So California needs to obligate all the money either on the earmark or on other projects that they can work on. If they don't, they're going to limit their opportunity to get more money next year from all the states that couldn't do that. But that was a piece in the earmark that allowed the Secretary to do that. We were a little fuzzy when the Secretary was announcing it, but we've seen the statement that allows him to do that. So I put the squeeze on you for inactive obligations and our expenditures. We're over 90%, I think, in expenditures here in California in Recovery Act. We're trying to make sure those things get pushed ahead. I know our timeline was 2015. We're out there saying, what can you get done now? What can you get done now? Let's try and push all those Recovery Act projects that can be done faster, quicker. Those are jobs that can be put out there. That was the intention of that money. If it's still sitting on the books, Recovery Act projects on inactive obligations, if you got an inactive obligation over a year not spent on a Recovery Act project, that's a pretty hard one for us to sit and say, yeah, there's a good reason for that. We need that money, and we need those jobs out there. So congratulations for all of the work that everybody, and I really do, it's something that doesn't get applauded enough. And I think you owe everybody in this room that touched a Recovery Act project. There was a lot of money, $2.57 billion that was spent here in California, or that will totally be spent in California. Other states are looking at that. I mean, there are little teeny, states that are getting $20 and $30 million for Recovery Act, and some of them are struggling getting to that point. And California was able to deliver almost $2.57 billion to date. Thousands of jobs that are out there, hundreds of projects, almost thousands of projects even, and a lot of work by a lot of people that don't normally play in the federal program. So there's a lot of people that had to learn it. There's a lot of outreach that went out with Caltrans, and a lot of the MPOs. There's a lot of outreach, so a lot of people deserve a lot of credit for delivering a great job with that program. So congratulations to everybody on that. And unless anybody else has any other questions, I'm going to eat my cookie.
I would like to say...
Commissioner, I don't think is your mic on?
I'm talking to you. No.
I know, but I...
Now do you hear me?
I don't need them to hear you, but...
I just want to say that you've got all the authority and the power to do whatever you have to do to make sure that we stay on schedule to get this money. So whatever help you may need, the commissioners are here to help you and everybody else. So I guess I'm going to put the blame on you if we don't get all this.
That works for me. I agree. I agree with you. And Malcolm and I have talked about that. We've met on this issue. We're going to do everything we can to expedite everything, expedite projects, make sure we're meeting all the requirements, but move them as quick. There are high priority projects. But the one good thing in all this is it's not the federal fiscal year, it's the calendar year. So it's not squeeze it all in by the end of September. At least there's a little gap after that. So that allows us some flexibility in the planning and the STIP or the FSTIP to be able to move some money around and make the projects work. So I have a lot of confidence that we'll get this done.
So as I understand it, or we understand it, that there will be no problems in you bringing the money to us?
That's the story I'm telling you.
Well, Commissioners, you've heard it.
We've already got it. The money's already here.
Right.
Yeah, but it's not on the street yet.
Correct.
That's where we.
So I'll put the lien on my partner to the left there, and
if you need help, you got 11 more that'll.
Help.
But thank you very much for the report. Now I'd like to move on to item number 10, the local reports.
Good morning, Commissioners. Will Ritter with the San Joaquin Council of Governments on behalf of the Regional Transportation Planning Agencies. The RTPA group met yesterday with staff from the Commission, Caltrans, and FHWA. One of the significant items of discussion was the delivery of federal projects, as has been highlighted here by prior speakers. With respect to local federal aid projects funded through programs such as the Regional Service Transportation Program and CMAQ, the regions have continued to work in strong partnership with the department not only to deliver 100% of the federal OA available this year, but to support the state's ability to pursue an additional $244 million in August redistribution from states unable to use all their federal funds. And to note that this is the 13th year in a row in which the state of California will be delivering 100% of its federal OA. So that's a compliment to all of the agencies involved, the state, as well as all the RTPAs. While the annual obligation of local federal funds has been positive, it has been noted previously, the Obama administration has recently expressed concern for the delivery of idle earmarks dating back to between 2003 and 2006. As noted, there were currently 71 projects representing about $43 million. The regions support Caltrans and CTC and FHWA working with the original project sponsors to deliver the projects by the December 2012 deadline, or to use the funding on other projects within the same region as possible. I know there's a lot of work reviewing that to see whether that is possible, but that is something that the regions are very interested in. And noted as previously, if successful, this could also provide the opportunity for Caltrans and the state at large, with the region's support, to go after new projects from those idle earmarks that are unable to be obligated from other areas of the state. On another note, one of the other significant items of discussion mentioned previously was the RTP meeting was the implementation of MAP 21. The regions are participating on the statewide working group led by Caltrans and the Commission to support discussions of both the distribution of funding as well as the implementation of new policies. While there is a collective interest by the regions in maintaining funding for programming of federal projects as currently included in many of our FTIPs, for the next year, the regions have strong interest in working towards policies that further streamline the delivery of federal projects and promote more flexibility of funding at the regional level. So while there's a commitment to kind of move forward with the projects program for the next year, there's strong interest to continue looking at larger picture aspects of MAP 21. I'd also like to recognize Jose Nuncio, the outgoing moderator for the RTPA group, and recognize his outstanding leadership over last year, where I think we had an unprecedented number of CTC meetings and activity with all the bond programs. So our thanks to Jose. And then I'd also
Where is Jose?
In the back.
It's already standing. And then also like to acknowledge the RTPA action yesterday to recognize Maura Tome for all of her efforts and contributions in transportation policy planning and project delivery in her tenure with the CTC. So I know she's not here today, but we'll be sending this to her later to come. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Will. And now, Lisa?
It's Sharon.
Sure, Sharon, I'm sorry. What do we got? I don't see Sharon.
Lisa was that's our air.
Good morning, Commissioners and Executive Director Bimla Reinhardt. This is Sharon Scherzinger. I'm the incoming chair of the Rural Counties Task Force. There are two items that I would like to focus on. We held our last Rural Counties Task Force meeting on July 20th. Of interest to us was the needs assessment that Susan Branson presented earlier. We've had a number of representatives that have participated in that group, as well as written some of the reports on specific fund types that we're looking at. We appreciate the opportunity to continue to work on that in terms of the priorities and finalizing the document. Lately, a majority of our time has been consumed on MAP 21. There are two primary areas that I'd like to highlight to you that are of interest to the rural agencies. First is that we continue on with our existing list of program projects. And then the second is, as we look at different formulas and things for distributing the funds both in this bill and a future federal bill, a lot of our rural counties have a very small population base. And so what we'd like to see happen is that there be a minimum level of funding for those agencies so they have the opportunity to at least complete some projects in a timely manner. Thirdly, we've been interested in the earmark information that came out last Friday. We look forward to working with Caltrans and the Federal Highway Administration on those to retain the earmarks and obligate the funding here in the state. We'd also love to go after some additional funding from other states while we're at it. Lastly, we held our elections for the Rural Counties Task Force at our July 20th meeting. Jerry Barton from El Dorado County was elected vice chair, Neil Peacock as secretary, and then I'm your incoming chair. One other thing I'd like to offer, I know Napa is very prestigious, Chairman Tavalloni, but El Dorado County, we have some pretty good wine, and we would be happy to host the commission at any time. We're not too busy for you.
May I have a motion on that, please?
All right. Any
Thank
questions?
you.
Okay.
Any questions?
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I think we'll take that offer as soon as we can find time to get there. Maybe tomorrow. Self-help? Andy?
Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, I'm Andy Chesley. I'm the Executive Director of the San Joaquin Council of Governments, and I am the Chair for the Self-Help Counties Coalition. Thanks for letting us have this opportunity to update you on our activities. We'll be meeting with, as a coalition with the Acting Secretary Kelly and Deputy Secretary Annis here today. A little later on, and we're going to be doing that on a fairly regular basis as well. Some of the things that we're going to be discussing are state-local partnership, the governor's proposed reorganization plan, and how to continue to build upon the Caltrans local self-help relationship. As I said, we're going to be meeting regularly, and I do appreciate the Secretary and the Deputy Secretary's willingness to extend a special invitation to us to participate in policy making. We have been participating in an ongoing discussion with the transportation community regarding the need to consider augmenting project delivery sunset extensions, and also the additional design-build authority. Fortunately, it's not the kind of thing that's going to be solved in any 1 or 2 months particular effort. It's going to be an ongoing effort here over the next couple of years to do this, but we're committed to making a difference in terms of project delivery and continuing the kind of tools and development of tools that help us deliver transportation projects here in California. We're meeting with the Department of Finance, the Assembly and Senate staff, trying to work a compromise on the preparation and review of PID documents. This has been a particularly strong issue for us. At the Self-Help Counties Coalition, we are committed to finding a resolution that both respects the role of the state of California, but also respects the role of self-help counties in terms of delivering transportation projects on the state highway system here in the state of California. Self-Help Counties Coalition is participating in MAP 21 just like everybody else is. Work group to find ways to implement this, even though we may be just doing it in the blink of an eye, as we begin work towards the extension of MAP 21 just about 2 years down the road. Self-Help Counties Coalition is planning our focus on the future, just a couple months away. Know that everybody has it on their calendar, but if you don't, it's November 13th through the 15th. It's at Newport Beach in Orange County, and we'll be looking forward to another successful event. We welcome you to join us and seek your input on the relevant topics for discussion. That covers the topics for today. Thank you very much, and happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Andy. Item number 13, state and federal legislative matters. Annette?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sarah's going to be passing out an update to the attachment to the book item.
Annette, your mic.
There's Sarah's passing out an update from the status report provided to you in the book item. This is updated as of this morning at around 6 a.m., so it should be pretty current. Yeah, it could be obsolete, that's true. The legislature reconvened after summer recess on August 6th, and they're plowing through just under 1,000 bills to get to the governor by the 31st of this month.
Did you say 1,000?
Just under 1,000, yeah. The governor has until September 30th to sign or veto the bills that will pass to him through both houses of the legislature. There are 4 bills I just wanted to point out on the update that Sarah just handed you. 2 of the bills that have been forwarded to the governor. The first is AB 1770. That's on page 1 of the handout. And this relates to the California Transportation Financing Authority, of which BIMLA is a member. This bill would provide that a rail project may consist of or include rolling stock for the purchase of the issuance of bonds to fund transportation projects. That went to the governor on the 20th. The next one is SB 1102. It's on page 2 of the handout. Among other things, this bill would revise provisions to require Caltrans project costs to include right-of-way support costs and require the Commission to allocate funds for construction support costs for a project in the STIP at the time of allocation for construction capital costs. We talked about this a little bit at our last meeting. This went to the governor yesterday. 2 bills that have been amended. One is which the Commission has supported is ACA 23. It's on page 1 of the handout. This bill pertains to lowering the voter threshold for a special tax by a local government for the purpose of providing funding for local transportation projects. This measure was amended on August 20th to include the definition of a local transportation project. Again, this went to the. This is currently in the Assembly for the 3rd reading. It's on their schedule for today. The last bill I'd like to discuss is another amendment. It's SB 878. It's on page 5 of the handout. We talked about this bill at the last meeting. This was the bill that would require the commission to undertake a study to assess the appropriateness of establishing an Office of Inspector General for Transportation. This bill was amended on October 9th. It's deleting the commission from that requirement, and it specifically would establish an Office of the Transportation Inspector General. So the commission is no longer involved in having to do a study or anything at this point in time for this bill. Staff has one recommendation for you today. If SCA 23 does go to the governor, staff would recommend that through the commission chair's approval and signature that a letter go to the governor restating the commission's support of this bill. That ends my report.
Any questions? Thank you.
Do we need a motion on that?
We need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Item number 14.
Commissioners,
Mitch, you're up.
this item is a budget and allocation capacity update. Stephen Keck from the department will be making a presentation. Following his presentation, I'll be raising several issues related to the allocations.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioner. Stephen Keck with Caltrans. My presentation on budget and allocation capacity is going to be a little bit longer than you might normally hear from me. This is because we are ending one fiscal year and beginning another. So I'm going to go ahead and start with back beyond about 6 years, but this is the largest amount we had in our records for total allocations in a year. And of course, that's mostly driven by the bonds. We had quite a bit of savings on the shop side, which left some capacity on the table, but because those are project savings, we're going to go ahead and roll that capacity into the current year for allocation again on new shop projects. Had a little bit of the opposite effect going on with the STIP. We over-allocated STIP in one fund source and under-allocated in others for a net of $46 million over-allocation in the STIP. It's fairly minor in terms of the total size of the STIP. It's about 5%, so we're not going to decrease the STIP allocation capacity for the next year. Bonds, of course, are what they are. We had a tremendous amount of bond allocations. If you do the math, which I'm doing as we speak, it's almost half of all allocations last year. So really, that's what's been bolstering our allocations. For the next year, we see changes in law since then, and we added some capacity last year due to high cash balances. And if you remember, we added that capacity pretty late in the year, so much of it rolled over into this year. It wasn't allocated last year. So the total capacity is just over $5 billion, including bonds. I will point out that the number for bonds there, that 1,900 at the bottom for Proposition 1B bonds, is a misprint. That should say 1982. So believe it or not, the 1982 as a total there should be one over, and then the entire total would be another 82 higher. So I apologize for that misprint, but we'll get that sorted out when we publish the quarterly report next month. This is a look at the next 24 months in terms of the state highway account cash forecast. I'll remind the Commission that each year we present a new 24-month cash forecast for the state highway account, which is our primary funding source. For a number of years now, we've seen significant cash issues with the state highway account. That little gray line with diamonds in it is what we call the prudent cash balance. That's the balance that if we had our druthers we would shoot for on an average basis. That balance enables us to pretty much address any statistical anomalies in our expenditures and our revenue. So if we have a month with a lot of expenditures and low revenue, we want to make sure we have enough cash on hand to cover that and without issue. So as you can see, the green line is the monthly ending balance as projected 2 years into the future. We're bouncing up and down quite a bit as we always do, but only in a few places do we ever actually meet that prudent cash balance. So we're going to see some periods, especially in the very beginning of 13-14, where we may need to take short-term loans from other fund sources, which at this time usually means going to the general fund for a loan. That's more than a year out, so that'll be refined as we get closer, but that's what we see right now as our choke point. It also happens to correspond with the last payment due from the state highway account to the toll bridge seismic retrofit program. So this 2013-14 year represents probably our tightest year, and you'll hear me say this probably just this one time, but I think there's light at the end of the tunnel. It's just that tunnel is still 2 years long. So after 13-14, we may not be quite so tight with cash, but we'll have to see when we get there. I also wanted to take a minute to address some news that's been all over the newspapers, mostly in relation to other departments, but in dealing with fund balances reported by departments not matching fund balances reported by the State Controller's Office. You won't see Caltrans in those articles because we're a little special in that we have 5 major transportation funds, the State Highway Account, the TIF, the TDIF, the PTA, and the TCRF. They're all run on a cash basis. You, of course, are familiar with this. I come here every month and talk about the cash basis of the funds. But we also have a special law that allows us to report this way in the governor's budget. So while we do differ from the controller's balances, it is directly reconcilable between our balance that we report and what the controller has on their records. So our cash balance that we report to you and that we report in the governor's budget directly tie back to the appropriate pieces of the controller's reporting. Just to sort of sum up, everything that we do is predicated on that cash balance and that cash forecast. The fund estimate is based on cash. Our allocation capacity is based on cash, and our reporting to you is based on cash. So it makes a lot of sense to do it that way. And it does match the controller's balance in an appropriate way. Because most of what I said is pretty good news, I wanted to throw this in as an educational piece. This is a graph that depicts the base excise tax revenue collections on both gasoline and diesel. I'll point out that the scale at the bottom starts at $1 billion. Really what this shows is that we've had a really dramatic drop over the past 5 years in gasoline consumption, which directly ties to the revenue on that base 18-cent tax. Specifically, the amount that comes to the shop or to the state for maintenance and shop has dropped $340 million since the peak 5 years ago. That's not the area under the graph. That's the difference between what we collected last year and what we collected 5 years ago. And that's a very significant drop. It's somewhere between 15 and 20% drop, depending on where you start, what year you're dividing against. I also want to point out this is not just a problem for the state. The local agencies also receive revenue directly tied to that 18 cents. And they're seeing the same or similar drops in revenue over the past 5 years. We've also looked at the miles traveled over the same time, and the vehicle miles traveled in the state have also declined steadily since the recession began in 2008. So we're having a little bit of trouble parsing out how much of this drop is due to the recession and how much might be due to fuel-efficient vehicles. But it's important to note that we've seen this drop, and we will be lucky if we get level next year and start to go up again, but it's really anybody's guess as to how that'll go. And I've joked around before, but if I knew which way it would go, I'd be very rich and probably be at a beach here. And I'm going to end with just a little note on Proposition 1A. It was approved, or a significant portion of about $4.7 billion was approved by the legislature in a separate act from the Budget Act. So those who were just following the Budget Act might have missed this piece. But it's the first significant appropriation for high-speed rail for the actual project that we've seen. It's about $4.7 billion in bonds and another $3.3 billion in federal. And that $4.7 billion also includes the amount of money that's available to the Commission to allocate for interconnectivity projects. That's it's on the allocation capacity chart of about $819 million is what's left. And I want to, this question has come up, so I want to assure the Commission that as those projects are ready to go, they can be allocated. There's no issue with selling bonds first or any of that funny business like we had with Prop 1B. So that's ready to go as soon as the projects are. And that's the end of my presentation. Are there any questions?
Thank you. Yes, Mitch?
I have a question about slide 4.
Yeah, if I had numbers on the slides, it would be easier.
Well, my question is, do those represent
which one, Mitch?
The SHA cash balance?
Oh, okay, this one. Yeah.
Do those represent lows within the month or month-end balances? And if they're month-end balances, what happens within the month?
Thank you, Mitch. That's an excellent question. So that's not a staged question, but we did have a presentation on this just about a year ago, I think. And these do not represent the low points in the month. They do, in fact, represent the end of each month. And as Mitch is aware, we generally receive our revenue at the end of the month. So the highway user's tax account revenue is deposited in the account 2 business days after the 28th of each month. So in a situation where you see this up and down, up and down, up and down thing, is because usually when the balance drops very precipitously like this, that's the month where we don't receive the revenue because that second business day is the first of the next month. And so then it'll pop back up again, and then you'll see the same thing over and over again. So while we sometimes experience inter-month difficulties with cash, that can be handled through internal borrowing that we do in what we call the transportation revolving account so that we can pay our bills. But in this case, we're not seeing any problems until at least 13-14 with that inter-month balance. And at that point, we'll redo our forecast and see where we stand.
Thank you.
And I guess I just want to summarize. Stephen was talking about the allocation capacity. The bottom line for the current year is that it's right about on what we need to make our STIP allocations, so we should be fine with STIP allocations this year. But Stephen usually is the one to bring the bad news, so I guess I want to be the one to do a little bit of that and put a little caution out there. One of the things that we looked at in doing this was we decided, well, that's great. We looked at this year. What does it look like next year? And we did that knowing that many things can change. There are often very significant changes to our revenues, to project delivery. Out in 13-14, the delaying of 1 or 2 big projects can have a significant impact. All that said, it appears right now we're going to have a pretty significant allocation capacity issue in 13-14. And we've worked, Juan and Laurel and I have, with Stephen and his staff, and there are a number of issues that we've identified that might cause that. One of them is we've had some significant and large extensions projects that were delayed in a year when we were a little tight in allocation capacity, and it kicked the problem down the road, and adding those up, in 13-14, it's over $100 million. Another issue is in 13-14, we have some very large projects, which is a much higher capital to support ratio just in terms of comparing the allocations to the program. So that means we need to allocate more than we would normally allocate in such as this year. So that creates part of the issue. The third issue is we're seeing right-of-way post-cert costs significantly higher than we had forecast in the fund estimate. This is cost between when they come to us with the construction allocation and they provide an updated estimate and when they actually finish the right-of-way. We had estimated those based on some historical data at about 15 to 20 million. We're seeing them up over 50 million, and that becomes a cumulative impact to what we can allocate. That is likely only to get worse. We've had a number of discussions over the last months and months about right-of-way and about the CMIA projects. Many of those projects were funded with STIP funds for right-of-way, and we did many of those with CERT 3Ws, which provide less certainty for that right-of-way estimate. So that's something that we can adjust for in the next fund estimate, but we're seeing a cumulative impact that we think part of which is attributable to that. Another couple of issues that we're seeing more and more STIP supplementals. While there's not a huge dollar amount, 10 million here, a few million there, you start to get real money pretty soon. And similarly, we're having there have been some relatively significant right-of-way and pre-construction cost estimates that are updated at the time of construction allocation, which are multiple millions of dollars, and all these things add up to what appears to be a possible problem in 13-14. And I say all that just as a caution that something we need to look out for. There are any number of things that can happen between now and then which will cause that to resolve. We some of the revenues could increase. We could have one or two large projects that just get delayed a couple of months, move them into the next year, and then we do a STIP programming cycle, and then we resolve the issue at that point. But it's something we're definitely going to be keeping an eye on. Yes.
I'm just a little curious in this economy how we could be so far off on right-of-way prices like by a factor of 3. That confuses me.
Yeah, because you could buy my house for about half of what I paid for it.
Yeah.
If you need the right-of-way.
Well, the estimate at the time of fund estimate was based on the information that right-of-way had at the time on historical data. I have not gone into detail many years back to look at what the basis for that was in actual data, but I can see over the last couple of years that it's much higher. And so it may be things like the estimates are not being updated frequently enough. I mean, there could be a number of things. Clearly, the market would indicate, as you said, that we shouldn't be paying more for right-of-way, significantly more from right-of-way than is programmed, but it gets to, are we programming the correct amount? The way the STIP system works, there is significant incentive to not update that amount. Because if that amount gets updated in the programming, it counts against the interregional or regional shares, whereas if it gets reported at the time of construction allocation or just comes up as a post-cert cost and adjusted in the fund estimate, it comes off the top and the pain gets spread. So, the system, while designed to be based on estimates, there are times when it leaves a little bit to be desired.
Commissioner? Could you pull up slide 6, please? So just an observation. I think the trend line that you're going to see is only going to accelerate over time, and that is the reduction of, I'm going to call it, fossil fuel-driven revenues. And from a societal point of view, that's a positive. From a funding point of view, it's a challenge. So my question is, and this would apply to events at the federal level, are people that are thinking ahead 2, 4, 6, 10 years modeling these trend lines to see the decrease in dollars certainly generated by, again, fossil fuel consumption taxes? And if so, who's leading that, and who's leading that within the state? Because I would certainly urge that if it's not being done, it be done very aggressively
so that we can anticipate a problem again 36 to 60 months out and start the laborious process of whatever legislative changes might be necessary to address this?
Well, I would say a couple of things. First of all, that's certainly a part of the needs assessment and what Susan is doing in terms of looking at the revenues and the future revenues. Also, in the last several years, that's been a part of the Commission's annual report and in terms of issues looking towards the future, that the fossil fuels were a fine proxy for user fees when everybody was dependent on fossil fuels. As we get perhaps less fossil fuel dependent, or certainly we have a greater fuel economy and alternative propulsion technologies, the Commission in its annual report advocated for more direct user fees, whether they be increased tolling, as is now, there's some allowances, as Vince mentioned, in MAP 21, or something like a vehicle miles traveled fee. So we've talked about it a little bit in our annual reports. It'll be a part of the needs assessment.
Any other questions?
Just a comment, Mr. Chair. Also keep in mind, as the California housing economy is recovering, land prices are going to start going up, and they have already, I think, in the Bay Area.
Yeah, we will definitely be paying significant amount of attention to right-of-way during the fund estimate process. I can tell you, we significantly improved the level of estimate between the prior fund estimate and this one, and clearly we have some room for more improvement. I think the other thing I would like to address, somewhat related to all this, before we move off the allocation of capacity and budget item, is the unobligated earmark or demo projects. One of the things that I have some concerns about, Malcolm had mentioned the department going to the local agencies and asking them, are they going to obligate them for those projects? There is some state statute which references what happens to obligational authority if it doesn't have to be spent on a specific project. Malcolm and I had a little bit of conversation about that this morning, and his staff and I talked about it yesterday. My reading of it is that if it is available for any project, then it comes through the Commission's SHOP or STIP process, and I would suggest that we need to take a real quick look at that and make sure that we're all agreement on what that statute says. And then if we have some, if it's something that has to come through the Commission's process, then we look at, if we have a potential STIP problem next year, see if we can have some STIP projects that we can, in the next, couple of months, allocate funds to that could obligate within that deadline.
Thank you, Mitch. Item number 15, I think you're still speaking.
Okay, I'm just going to turn the page first. I'll let Stephen give an introduction while I do that.
Thank you. I lost my pointer thingy.
Okay.
I'll try to wing with that. So you got a lot of great details from Vince already on many of the provisions in MAP 21. Fortunately, I'm not going to dwell on many of those provisions. What I'm mostly going to focus on today is the administration's proposal on how to move forward with MAP 21 and how we propose to fund projects going forward. So as was mentioned, and I'll be brief on this section especially, MAP 21 was passed into law early in July. It is 27 months long. It extends through the end of this current fiscal year and then 2 more years. And long-term should be in quotes there to recognize that 2 years is not very long down the road. And I'll remind everybody we had more than 1,000 days of extensions under the last bill. So this 2 years could be 2 years plus 1,000 days if we get to that point. Obviously, there's a considerable consolidation of programs, as was mentioned. My presentation today is going to focus almost entirely on the highway side, and this is because the FTA has been a little slower in getting out there with their message, and I would encourage those that are interested in tuning into a webcast that the FTA is going to have this Friday. It was mentioned at the RTPA meeting yesterday, and the information was provided so that interested parties could tune in. Other than that, there's still not a lot of details yet from the FTA side, but obviously our folks are going through it pretty diligently and working with local partners on that. Also, as was mentioned, we're going to be transitioning to more of a performance-based program, but the vision presented in MAP 21 takes a fairly measured approach. The Federal Highway Administration will be coming up with guidance on those issues over the next year or so, and the actual implementation of many of those performance measures will occur after the end of MAP 21, up to 18 months after we receive guidance. So I think it's very true to say that this is the first step in what's going to be a new paradigm for how we move forward with federal funding. In terms of the administration's proposal for how to proceed, the first thing I want to note is that the total amount of funding provided in MAP 21 is actually equal to the amount of funding provided in the last year of the old Act, Safety Lou. It's at about $3.5 billion for the state. The governor's proposal or the administration's proposal would be to maintain a status quo in terms of funding for all the appropriate parties, maintaining a split that is consistent with what was seen under Safety Lou, approximately 62% that goes to the state, 38% that goes to local regions. When we're doing this, because we recognize that there's a lot of projects already programmed for delivery against these funds in both our programs and local agency programs, and we want to make sure that the funding isn't yanked out from under those as we enter a new fiscal year that begins in just 2 months. So we want to move forward, at least in the short term, with a plan that funds all of those projects. Legislative changes are not necessary to implement this sort of status quo plan, but as we move forward, we recognize there's going to be a lot of discussion on how to meet performance goals, how to do splits of some of the funding that is flexible. So while we're having those discussions, we're entering into this transitional period, which provides funding for program projects. As I mentioned, it will continue funding at the current level for RSTP funds. It will continue funding for the SHOP program at the current level. It also continues the bridge funding at the current level. As Vince mentioned, the bridge program went away with MAP 21, but it is still eligible, so we're carving out a piece out of the new programs to make sure that those bridges are funded. And of course, CMAQ and MP metropolitan planning apportionments remain the same. We're also proposing to continue to fund Safe Routes to School. Even though that program has been eliminated, it is still an eligible use of a couple of programs. We're proposing at this moment to fund it through the Highway Safety Improvement Program. We may, as we continue discussions with Federal Highways, need to change where that's funded, but right now we want to set it aside and make sure that we recognize that it's an important program that we want to continue to move forward with. And finally, the Transportation Alternatives Program, which is a new flexible program that took over for the old TE program and a couple of other small programs, is roughly the same size, and the administration is proposing to continue to fund projects that were TE projects under the old bill through the Transportation Alternatives Program as that flows through the STIP, so that the projects programmed against that don't lose their funding at the last minute. And as I mentioned, we recognize that there are a lot of different opinions on how this can move forward. We have started a working group with a lot of representatives that are here today as well. Rachel Falsetti is running that group for the department, so she's got a lot of experience, a lot of contacts, and is doing a great job so far with the one meeting at least, running that working group. So they'll be looking at all the longer-term policy issues, and if there are changes that might be necessary in legislation, they're looking at having a proposal early in 2013. And the final slide is a comparison of Safety Lou funding on the left in yellow. The way MAP 21 distributes the funds in the blue in the middle, and then on the far right side in a color that we still haven't come up with a name for, but might be beige or apricot, is the administration's proposal for MAP 21. As you can see, the way MAP 21 was written, They've changed most significantly the splits for the STP program, which is a flexible program that has traditionally been split between state and local according to the federal law. The new law changes the split to 50-50, and the administration, recognizing that changes the game a little bit, wants to move forward with a status quo that provides the same amount of funding as was under Safety Lou. But you can't look at each program individually and say, I want this to be that way. You've got to look at all the programs holistically to ensure that the total funding mix remains equal. So we went through quite a bit of effort to do that. The administration's proposal does provide the same amount of funding as under Safety Lou, in roughly the same programs as were under Safety Lou, and doesn't pull the rug out from under any funding. And as you can see at the bottom there, we've put the totals in for not just the percentage, but the dollar amounts. And you can see they're very equal between Safety Lou, the last year of Safety Lou, and the governor's proposal for 12-13. And actually, I will end my presentation there and take questions. I know there's going to be probably a lot of other people that want to comment on this, so I'm not going to go through all the different lines on there.
Thank you, Stephen. I guess the first thing I want to note before I go into some of the details is that while this is basically a 2-year bill, it's funded with 10 years of savings, which are perhaps as real as some of what goes into the state budget. So really, in terms of a long-term outlook for the Federal Highway Trust Fund, we still have the issue there. Those are still going to have to be worked out if we're looking at this level of funding in the long term. Stephen went over the administration's proposal. There has been a lot of discussion about this with the regions and the various interested parties. A lot of that discussion, everybody in theory can agree on maintaining a status quo, but not everybody agrees on what that status quo is. The administration's proposal is based on the bottom line. This is how much dollars the state would maintain control of, if you will, and this is how much gets suballocated to the regions. There are some regions who are advocating for a more programmatic look at how, in some of the individual programs, Safety Lou and state law interacted to create certain outcomes, and then how can we recreate those outcomes under MAP 21. I guess I look at that and I think really the status quo should be based on what the underlying policy was. And the underlying policy that the state has used in the past is if the feds require us to spend money in certain areas, then we've delegated that decision-making to the county. If the state has discretion over what area of the state to spend the money on, then we have retained that discretion as a state. And I think that's the real policy behind what the status quo is, which got us the Safety Lou on the left there and the percentages, but is really more the middle column in Stephen's graph. We talked about this a lot at the working group. We also talked about at the working group, can we step back and say, well, does everybody agree that we're at least going to have commitments to our 2 years of projects that we have programmed, because this is really a long-term thing. There was not unanimity of that commitment over 2 years. There seemed to be for 1 year. And related to that, there was some discussion of, do we in fact need legislation? I think those two issues, part of that comes out to a small thing, the TA program, and we'll end up speaking a lot about the TA program, just as we used to speak a lot about the T program, even though it's a small amount of money. And in fact, who gets discretion over the money, whether it's a county, whether it's an MPO, whether it's the state for that program. Another large issue that I think on a policy level we need to address, and Vince mentioned this a little bit, it's flexibility. We all, the commission and many people behind me, we went to DC and we said, we want flexibility. We want to consolidate programs. We want to make the decision. And the question is, do we as a state want to then turn around with our newfound flexibility and consolidated programs and then take away some of that flexibility and carve out certain money for certain programs? And there may be legitimate policy reasons to do that for some. This is going to be an issue with with the Bridge program or the Safe Routes to Schools program? What's the best way to distribute those funds, and do we need to have a separate program for those? I would also say there's a discussion about a little bit about the performance measures, and that's just starting. The issue that I would bring up is what we do in California to a large extent is distribute money based on formula. Distributing money based on formula leaves meeting performance goals to chance. Those two are inconsistent. Telling people, on the other hand, that what they got by formula now has to be based on performance, I would think would be a challenge also. It would be nice if some of this discussion of how we can incentivize or work towards meeting performance goals could be talked about in context of some new revenues. And lastly, in working forward, there's been some discussion about the working group. One of the things that came clearly out of the working group is that they're all seem to be fine with finding some way to keep the current projects going at least for 1 year, if not 2. But there seemed to be consensus for 1 year. What they really want, though, is the commission to adopt some kind of policy or guidelines to give them a comfort level. What they suggested, and we can do this if there's the desire of the commission, bring a draft of something forward at the September meeting and for adoption in October to give everybody a chance to talk about it.
Thank you. Any questions? Yes, Jim.
Just an observation. I'm not necessarily staking any ground on this yet. I'm just asking a question. If we were involved in a dialogue for flexibility, and we indeed got the flexibility, then there seems to be the argument that we need to keep things the way they were. I don't understand how we can have both pieces of cake and eat it too. I mean, what are we assuming? I thought that some of the push for consolidation and streamlining and flexibility was because the existing system isn't exactly perfect.
Well, I would say no system is perfect.
Let's just say it isn't even that great. How about that?
I think, I guess, from my perspective, I concur. I think there's a lot of benefit to retaining that flexibility and to see if there's a way to separate out perhaps some of the issues, and there may be legitimate reasons for some of the programs. One of the big issues is Safe Routes to Schools, which is a relatively small program, though important, and certainly important to the constituents. Is it possible? It's I think $21 million of federal funds and $21 million of state funds. Is it possible to do it as a matching program just with the state funds and leave it out of the whole federal discussion? But does that make disadvantaged communities less able to compete? I mean, I think we can get to some of this looking at the programs. There are others, I think, that are more challenging. I think the Bridge one is a good example. If we're distributing money based largely on formula, structures in small counties, less populous counties, which don't get as much money, they're going to be hard to pay for those. And so, is that something that, from a policy perspective, there maybe is a reason to do something different? So yes, I'm arguing both sides.
And if I can add a comment to that, part of the reason, or the primary reason for the working group is to work out these issues. We have a pretty short timeline before the start of the fiscal year, and that's why we're proposing to go status quo while we work out these longer-term issues. And I think, if we're looking at a timeline where we're going to have a proposal early in 2013, then I think it's appropriate to continue with the status quo while we work out those issues.
Mr. Chair, flexibility, I would concur with Commissioner. Our flexibility of the state is a good thing. Any changes that we want to make from the way we have been operating, we need to be thoughtful about it and not knee-jerk about it. And let's educate ourselves as to what opportunities MAP 21 presents us, be thoughtful about what changes we want to make, and do it in a collaborative way through a task force, and then make a recommendation. But I think we're proposing to continue down the path we've been on in distribution of transportation funds till we know enough to make changes.
And I think along that line that most people do agree that we have a commitment to the current program of projects, whether it be the STIP or the SHOP or the locals. But I would say not everybody agrees, or at least how long that is. And I think part of the issue is that we have, in some federal programs, the state has in the past said when money goes to multi-county MPOs, that money actually goes to the County Transportation Commission. Well, now we have a new program with money designated to an MPO, and we don't have any state statute that says that that money goes to that county, the counties within that MPO. And I think that's going to be a part of the tension. It's not a lot of money. Certainly from the big, it's a very small percentage of what we're talking about here. But I think it'll be a large percentage of the discussion.
Commissioner Inman?
I guess it's under the heading of careful what you wish for, and maybe this is a nice problem for all of us to be having. When most of us didn't think we were going to see a federal bill at all, so it's nice that we're having this discussion. I think on the working group, it sounds to me like they could maybe be meeting every day for a while or something, so I'd be a little concerned with the working group really being collaborative and productive. I mean, there's a lot of work, a lot of unanswered questions, so I think it really, really is important. So I'm going to encourage everybody to take the time and invest. There's some brilliant, brilliant minds out there with some good ideas, and we need to think about the unintended consequences that may occur because it's all interrelated. So I would just really encourage this working group to ramp up and give some good thought, because the intent of MAP 21 really is to be a foundational building block. So I don't think we want to say, well, this is just an interim, we'll get by any way we can get by, and whatever happens, there'll be a new day. So I think it is, to me, a lot of work to be done. So I'd encourage you all to figure out how often you can communicate and get good input. And, I think the working group, because our partners are very, very important in our overall success.
Yeah,
Can I add to that, since I'm leading the working group, or say a few things? So this working group is intended to be the lead of some of the major current implementation issues, but there's a longer term with a lot of different groups that are also going to be working on various issues related to bridge and very specific issues on performance measures. So this is the top level, and it's going to split off. So there's a lot of other people working on it. It's not just this one group. We're just kind of rolling up all the issues. And there are a lot of people that are very involved with working on implementation issues. In addition, the feds have 180 days to do rulemaking related to MAP 21. So there will be things that come out of the rulemaking that will potentially affect what we go forward with, or impact what we go forward with. Well, we are going to be giving them opinions related to what we feel should be taken care of in the rules too. Yes.
And I think the consensus is, as you said, that while this is only 2 years, this is going to be the blueprint for moving forward. And I think that's part of why people want to take a more thoughtful approach and spend some time really thinking about that. And Rachel has pulled together many of the brilliant minds in transportation and was nice enough to include me also.
Thank you. And we'll move, any other questions? We'll move on to item number 16. Teresa?
Commissioners?
We're going to shorten it
I was
up.
still listening to Mitch. Commissioners, item number 16 is the hearing for the 2012 Highway Railroad Crossing Safety Account Program. Attached to your book item, I've included the nominations that we received, that staff received by July 1st, the due date, for the program. Since the initial program of projects in 2008, we've completed 2 cycles. The 2012 program is the third, and the remaining funds for the program are, for Part 1, $22,137,000. For Part 2, $18,037,000. Projects programmed under this cycle will need to come to the Commission for an allocation by June 2014. Prior to adopting the program, The guidelines stipulate that at least one public hearing will be held before the commission. The hearing provides an opportunity for HRCSA applicants to familiarize the commission with the projects nominated. The schedule also calls for the issuance of staff recommendations by September 5th of 2012 with the adoption of the program at the September commission meeting. At this point, staff asks the chair to open the hearing for public comment.
Thank you. Public comments, and we'll have Adrian, and behind that Steve, and behind that one Mary and Ann, and we'll give all of you 2 minutes apiece, please.
Good afternoon, Chair Tavaloni and Commissioners. My name is Adrienne Cardoso. I'm with Orange County Transportation Authority, and I'm here to speak in support of the Lincoln Avenue Railroad Safety Pathway project that was submitted by the City of Santa Ana. The project will construct a grade-separated pedestrian and bicycle pathway at Lincoln Avenue using an existing railroad bridge at Santiago Creek. The new project pathway will be physically separated from the railroad with safety lighting and ADA accessible features. It will connect Santa Ana neighborhoods with parks and schools on the other side of the tracks. Originally, there was an at-grade crossing at Fairview. However, due to the addition of double track and OCTA at-grade crossing safety enhancements that were installed along the track in this area, the PUC required shutting down the Fairhaven at-grade crossing. The PUC will not approve a pedestrian bicycle-only at-grade crossing in this area. The city is requesting $920,000 in HRCSA funds for a total project cost of just over $1 million. This is an extremely cost-effective project because of the fact that we are using an existing bridge and developing an undercrossing at that bridge. Without this alternative proposed pathway, there is concern that pedestrians may simply violate the fairly new closure at Fairhaven. This is a significant concern for us because we have recently implemented a 24-hour quiet zone in this area, so there is no whistleblowing in this area. Without this pathway, pedestrians and bicycles have to walk an extra mile out of their way to cross the tracks. The pathway also helps provide connectivity to the City of Orange Regional Bikeway Pedestrian Pathway and reconnects Lincoln to Fairhaven for bicycles and pedestrians in compliance with the city's existing general circulation plan. The city has held several meetings with neighborhoods in the areas to solicit their support, and they are extremely supportive. This is also a joint Mayor of Santa Ana and OCTA CEO supported project.
Your time is up.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you for your time. Steve Escobar, representing the Port of Stockton. I'm here speaking in support of our application for the Navy Drive BNSF underpass improvements. Related to that project is the current Caltrans San Joaquin COG State Route 4 Crosstown Freeway Extension Project. That project will start construction anticipated in 2013 with planned Fresno ramp closures by 2015-2016. The purposes of that project are to improve the mobility of port-bound vehicles and also remove industrial traffic from the adjacent Boggs Track residential neighborhood. When completed, Navy Drive becomes the primary entrance to the port through this underpass area. The new off-ramps will be several hundred feet away from the Navy Drive BNSF underpass at this point. As part of the project benefits for the underpass improvements, it delivers the highest priority of improvements given the funding available. The new underpass structure will accommodate a 4-lane connection to Navy Drive. It also constructs a second bridge mainline track shared by BNSF and Amtrak San Joaquin route. The overall project benefits will reduce forecasted delays for inbound port vehicles. It supports the purpose and the need for the Crosstown Freeway extension and supports future planned expansion of both freight and commuter rail. Just as a note, the vehicle trip generation anticipated from the freeway extension project will increase fivefold for this area over the next 20 years. It is the opinion of the port that the underpass improvements are critical for the success of the State Route 4 extension project. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Mary Grace?
Hello, Chair, Commissioners, staff. I'm Mary Grace Houlihan. I'm with the City of Lathrop, and I'm here just to acknowledge the thank you to staff for their work and efforts in prioritizing these projects. Our project, the Lathrop Road grade separation, is a Priority 1 project. It has regional significance in that it is a potential for the high-speed rail corridor. It is also one of 2 primary rail lines servicing the Port of Stockton. It is a great impact to our community and to the local communities in that the longer trains do have a significant effect, blocking more than one arterial through the community and the supporting communities, and creating up to 8 miles of rerouting of traffic. I won't take much of your time. We are at the City of Lathrop very in need of this project. We are far along in our right-of-way acquisition. The Sharp Army Depot has already dedicated and committed to our project. They had a significant right-of-way dedication to make towards this, and our design is well underway. We will be ready for bid by the end of the year and are significantly far along in our right-of-way acquisition. So again, thank you for the consideration of this project.
Thank you. Next.
Good day, Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, Ms. Reinhardt, and CTC staff. My name is Ann Louise Rice. I'm the Grants Development Manager for Metrolink. Thank you for allowing me to discuss briefly the grade crossing improvements that Metrolink has submitted during this public meeting. We have submitted 13 projects. Taken together, they will make substantial progress in our improvements to multiple crossings in sub-corridors, as well as larger corridors. And we call this the comprehensive approach. It's a sealed corridor approach, and I've provided a map for all of you to see the crossings that we have submitted as a request in this funding source. Our sealed corridor approach is intended to provide opportunities both to limit access to crossings by, for example, adding 4 quad gates that prevent drivers from driving around gates, as well as to clear crossings more effectively. An example of what we do there is installing software that synchronizes the gate arm with traffic light and speed, and traffic lights as well as the speed of the approaching train. The crossings on the map you see represent key opportunities to either finish off a sub-corridor within a sealed corridor, as is the case with Doran, Brantford, Grandview, and Sonora. They are all within the Glendale area. As well as kicking off sealed corridor opportunities on other parts of our network, including in San Bernardino, where we want to have an opportunity to invest, have you help us invest in the Hellman Boulevard grade crossing. There's work already being done there, and this would take an opportunity to start our sealed corridor on that line. On the final line where you see additional requests, Moorpark, Sycamore, Erringer, First, and Woodley, these all represent opportunities to make investments on our Antelope Valley line. This is also part of the Amtrak Pacific Sealed Corridor.
Your time is up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mike Whitlock, City of Tulare, City Engineer. We're bringing forth a project in the City of Tulare requesting $3.9 million of HRCSA funds to build a crossing over the Union Pacific Railroad for our Santa Fe Trail. The Union Pacific Railroad runs 20 freight trains per day through our downtown area, and we have no safe crossings within the downtown area for people walking. We have a history of being able to bring projects through and to get them built. Some of the members of the CTC were at a recent town hall meeting in our county and witnessed our project that had HRCSA funding that we have now finished. That project was allocated just 2 years ago, and we're finished building it. So this project, we're prepared to move forward. We have all of the right-of-way. It's city property. We're ready to move this project out to construction within a year. Thank you.
Thank you. Teresa?
And that concludes the hearing. So if there's any questions regarding the program, I'll be happy to answer them.
Move staff recommendation.
Second.
This is just a hearing. What I will do is September 5th, I will issue staff recommendations, and everyone will have an opportunity to look at the program. And at the September meeting, you will adopt the program. Okay?
Thank you, Teresa. Item number 17, please. Juan?
Thank you, Commissioners. Item 17 is an action item. It's a request to amend the fiscal year 11-12 EM program to add a new project. As you may remember, at the March meeting, you took an action to amend the 11-12 program, and that left a little over $316,000 to program and allocate. Pursuant to that meeting, you requested that we work with the Natural Resources Agency to find the eligible project. The Resources Agency has worked with the City of Rockland, the agency that has the next project on the substitution list, and they deemed that the project is still ready to be delivered. The department has determined that the project has been environmentally cleared. Therefore, staff recommends that you amend the project into the 11-12 EM program.
Any questions? Yeah.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Thank you. Item number 18, Stephen?
Yes, Commissioners, now we're up for the main event. The Commissioners will consider agenda items 18, 19, and 21 together, a 3-for-1 deal. The items relate to the TCIF project number 3, the Outer Harbor Terminal, Intermodal Terminals OHIT project in the Port of Oakland. Item 18 is the formal Commission approval of the OHIT baseline agreement amendment. Item number 19 lays out the revised scope, cost, schedule, and funding plan for the OHIT project. The OHIT project, as amended, is now Phase 1 of the 2012 Master Plan to redevelop the former Oakland Army base land that is located in the Port of Oakland. The complete redevelopment, including all phases, is expected to take 10 years. Much of the Phase 1 improvements will be located on former Army Oakland base land that was conveyed to the City of Oakland, with most of the TCIF matching funds now derived from the development of the city land. Therefore, the city is now a co-signer of the baseline agreement. Phase 1 of the 2012 Master Plan, the OHIT project, is estimated to cost $499 million. The TCIF commitment to the OHIT project remains unchanged at $242 million. The remaining funds are split as follows. Port of Oakland, $15.7 million. City of Oakland, $54.5 million. Federal Tiger Grant, $15 million. And private funds, $172 million. In order to have the state and federal funds pay only for transportation infrastructure, the OHIT project is being split into 6 segments, with TCIF funds dedicated to construction activities in segments number 2, the rail access improvements and manifest yard, and segment number 3, city site prep work and backbone infrastructure. Item 21 is the final EIR addendum with findings of fact and statements of overriding consideration for the 2012 Master Plan to redevelop the former Oakland Army base. The project will result in significant, unavoidable impacts to transportation, traffic, cultural resources, aesthetics, biological resources, historical resources, and air quality, and cannot be reduced to a less than a significant level with mitigation. The project's lead agency has adopted a statement of overriding consideration and findings that the project's benefits outweigh the unavoidable adverse environmental effects of the project. Staff recommends that the Commission approve agenda items 18, 19, and 21.
Thank you. Any questions? We have speakers? Do we have a speaker, Gene Hazard? You are speaking on all 4, 3, 5?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
So, may I have 10 minutes? Is that 10 minutes on all 4?
I doubt that.
Nice try. Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Gene Hazard, and you may not be aware of it, but I am a plaintiff in the case against the city and the Oakland Army Base, and which is 126-24082, and I left a copy of the actual complaint with staff. I also left a copy of the case management with staff. Yesterday, by a court order, I got a court order, and I filed a lease pendants on the property that is identified, the city property that you have before you right now. I'm asking for you, because you may not be aware of the current activities, to hold off on this action until you could review what effect my action is going to have on the Oakland Army Base. We're scheduled for a case management conference on December 17th, 2012. The list pendants means they can't go forward to sign a lease disposition development agreement. So I'm asking for, if you decide you're going to approve these action items today, you do it with a contingency. If you don't approve these action items, I'm requesting that you defer any consideration until your next meeting to see what impact, if any, my action is going to have on the future development on the city side. With respect to some of the concerns that I've expressed in my complaint, and I'm going to read to you the prayer. As first cause of action, rescind and halt any action related to signing and implementation of the lease disposition and development agreement between the City of Oakland and Prologis CCIG or CCIG Global Inc., LLC. Defendant Phil Dagami of CCIG and defendant Daniel Letter of Prologis and their entities shall be required to produce evidence of financial capacity to complete the project and to provide reasonable private investment to match the funds contributed by the city and the state. As a second cause of action, rescind and halt any action related to the signing and implementation of the lease disposition agreement between the City of Oakland and Prologis CCIG or CCIG Oakland Global. As to the third cause of action, void any future waiver of competitive bidding process in the City of Oakland contracting practices and disallow the special exceptions based on such waiver being deemed in the best interests of the city. As to the fourth cause of action, institute industry standards requirements that a financial grantor be required on OAB development so that the city is not subject to undue financial hardship and irreparable financial harm. Mandate that the administration be required to develop policies and procedures for future capital projects prior to the Oakland Army Base moving forward that states what, when, and how information regarding scope and the cost should be communicated.
Excuse me, sir, but,
yes, sir.
But we need to wrap this up quickly.
Okay, let me just say finally, the performance audit on the Fox Theater. That is, you got the same cast of characters on the Army base. And in this performance audit that was recently completed, it said, and I'll conclude, Mr. Chair, the final, which the city did not adhere to.
It must be real quick.
Okay, it's just this. However, the objective of this performance audit was to evaluate whether or not the renovation met the necessary standards in the project management and contract compliance as well. Use this project evaluation as a guide for future redevelopment projects Given the current Army base redevelopment, the timing couldn't be better for the agency to know where its strengths are and where the agency must improve it is to deliver upon its responsibility.
Thank you, sir. That must be it.
So, thank you, sir.
Thank you. Next speaker, Omar.
Good afternoon, Chair Taglioni and Commissioners, Executive Director Reinhardt, and staff. I'm Omar Benjamin, the Executive Director of the Port of Oakland. I'm here with Mr. Fred Blackwell, who's the Deputy City Administrator, along with members of our team at California Commercial Investment Group and Prologis, and our Board President, Gilda Gonzalez. We just wanted to extend our thank you for your support and guidance on this project, and we're here ready to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions from anyone? Thank you. Mr. Phil Tagami.
I echo Mr. Benjamin's comments to you, Commissioners. Thank you for your time and consideration today, and we stand ready to answer any questions if you have them.
Thank you. Any questions? That's it.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Item number 21.
We actually dealt with 21. We're going to do
I'm sorry,
item 20.
22.
Item 20.
Where are we going?
Item number 20, the Commission has directed agencies with TCIF projects to provide executed project baseline agreements that identify project benefits and set forth project cost, scope, and schedule. In accordance with the direction, the Port of LA, the implementing agency for TCIF project number 86 and 87, has provided executed project baseline agreements. Staff recommends that the Commission approve the TCIF project baseline agreements.
Any questions?
Move it.
All those in favor? Aye. So moved. 22 Yeah.
22, we're going to move to the consent calendar.
Thank you.
Commissioners, agenda item 23.
Item 23.
Agenda item 23 is a draft DIR for the Interstate 710 corridor project in Los Angeles County. The draft DIR identifies 4 build alternatives under consideration to widen the 710 to 10 lanes. 3 of these alternatives provides for a separate freight corridor. 1 of the build alternatives would toll trucks using the freight corridor. The project is estimated to cost $5.56 billion and is not fully funded. A combination of federal and local measure funds are planned for the project. There is a change to this book item that's noted on the change list to clarify that the build alternatives for this project will have unavoidable significant environmental impacts. As the Commission is a responsible agency, this report was provided to the Commission for comment. Staff recommends that the Commission direct staff to send Caltrans a letter that the Commission has no comments pertaining to the environmental impacts of the project or the alternatives under consideration in the draft DIR, that Caltrans and its partners should identify and secure the funding needed to complete the alternative that is selected, and that given that tolling is under consideration, the Commission encourages Caltrans and its partners to ensure early communication and coordination with the Commission in the event it is anticipated that the Commission will be requested to approve this project for delivery through a public-private partnership consistent with the provisions of Senate Bill 4, or for construction approval to allow for financing and tolling approval by the California Transportation Financing Authority as provided for in AB 798.
Thank you. I believe we have a Janet Dawson. You have...
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I just wanted to extend to you my apologies of my boss, Assemblymember Bonnie Lowenthal. She wanted to be here today, generally and especially on this project, which she's been very involved in and has meant a lot to her. So I apologize that she wasn't able to make it. There's a few things going on in the Capitol right now. So she wanted me to extend congratulations to the folks who worked on this project. She really commended the planning efforts that went into this, the bottoms-up approach that was very inclusive of the community, and she reports that a number of her constituents, I guess, attended a public hearing that was held earlier this month. And while there are a lot of issues, or there were issues raised in terms of some of the environmental impacts of the project, she's confident that if the planning process continues as it has for the last 3 or 4 years that she's been involved in this, that there will be a successful outcome on that. So she wanted me to come and extend her appreciation to all that were included in this, and is hopeful that the EIR will be approved and the project can go forward. So thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
Move staff approval.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Item number 24.
Commissioners, agenda item 24 is another draft DIR. It's for the San Diego Freeway I-405 improvement project in Orange and Los Angeles counties. The draft DIR identifies 3 build alternatives under consideration. One of these alternatives would include tolling. The draft EIR identifies significant and unavoidable impacts due to land use planning and aesthetics. This project is estimated to cost between $1.3 and $1.7 billion, depending on the alternative that is selected. Again, as the Commission is a responsible agency, this report was provided to the Commission for comment. Staff recommends that the Commission direct staff to send Caltrans a letter that the Commission has no comments on the environmental impacts or the alternatives considered in the draft EIR, and that Caltrans and its partners should identify and secure the funding depending on the alternative selected. And given that design, build, procurement, and tolling is under consideration, the Commission encourages Caltrans and its partners to ensure early communication and coordination in the event the Commission would be later asked to approve the project for public-private partnership delivery or design build under SB4, or for tolling and financing through the California Transportation Financing Authority as provided for in AB 798.
Thank you. Janet, you're up again.
Thank you again, Commissioners. Janet Dawson with the Assembly Transportation Committee. Unfortunately, on behalf of Assemblymember Lowenthal, our comments on this project aren't as glowing as the ones on the last one. Her district has been very frustrated with what they perceive, I think, is the lack of Orange County working with Los Angeles County, and particularly Long Beach, on this project. And she's very concerned for the lack of the interregional coordination. So she would encourage, please, the folks to come to the table and try to work with the region to the north and or to the county to the north, and try to develop some of the same inclusive participation that we had on the previous project. So thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Susan, I received some contacts from constituents on this issue, and it pertains to a really discrete issue on the Orange County part of the project and in the city of Seal Beach. One, their concerns were raised that there's already been construction going on, which has been going on for a while. Now they're looking at widening it further. I don't have an opinion on the widening, but just as the impacts that a number of impacts were submitted by the Seal Beach City Council that are not in the report. There's also an issue with whether an alternative on the other side of the freeway, I think taking or trying to do a deal with the Los Alamitos Naval Center has not been looked at adequately by the local agency and Caltrans. There's an issue of a taking on the other side of the freeway in your neighborhoods where they're going to take some parkland. And then there's an issue of a sound wall coming down during construction that I think people are very agitated about. So I don't know if you've heard from some of these people, but do you have any thoughts on that? Have they contacted the commission? Has this been raised through the agency?
Commissioners, we did receive a letter, I believe you have it as a handout, with respect to this project. These comments right now at this stage of the CEQA process are to be forwarded to the Caltrans as the CEQA lead agency, and I do know that OCTA is working in cooperation with Caltrans. And so what we can do, if you want to forward me your comments that you've received, we'll forward those on to Caltrans and OCTA for their consideration and response as part of the CEQA process. At this point, as a responsible agency, as the Commission, as you are, it is not our role to assume a CEQA lead role in responding to any of these comments that are coming forward, but we do need to forward those on to Caltrans.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman. Yes.
And for information purposes only, I know OCTA is here in the room, but in my day job, I do understand that OCTA is working with both the business community and the communities up and down the 405 to try to reach some accommodation on some of the design issues of this road, so and the improvements. So I respect your concern. I do know that these same issues have been raised with OCTA.
Yeah, and this document, once it's gone through the environmental process and all of those public comments are responded to, you will have an opportunity to see that final EIR and at that stage determine whether or not to approve the project for future consideration of funding.
Thank you. Any questions?
Move approval of staff recommendations.
Second. All those in favor? Aye. So moved.
Chairman, I'd like to be recorded as an abstention on that last vote.
Oh, okay.
Abstention.
Commissioner Frommer is abstaining from voting.
Item number 25, information calendar. Stephen?
Yes, Commissioners. The next 6 agenda items, 25 through 30, are information reports deemed by staff not to raise any issues. The individual information reports will not be discussed unless specifically requested by a Commissioner.
Thank you, Stephen. Item number 31, consent calendar.
Yes, Commissioners. The next 31 agenda items, 31 through 61, are consent items. The following changes need to be identified. Item 22 is being added to the consent calendar, which is the LA 10 HOV lane project for future consideration of funding. Under item 40, resolutions of necessity, we now have 30 uncontested resolutions of necessity, not 33. Resolution number C-20899, C-20925, and C-20928 are withdrawn because the property owners have requested appearances or settled with the department, leaving only now 30 resolutions for commission action. Then under item number 40, project number 3 is withdrawn. Project 4, 9, 10, and 12 have project IDs changed. Agenda item number 49, projects 4, 5, and 6 also have project ID numbers changed. Agenda item number 51, project ID number is also changed. Agenda item 54, project number 3 is really project number 7. And agenda number 57, item 57 and 58, you have replacement yellow items in your packets. With these changes, staff recommends that the Commission approve the consent calendar.
So moved.
All those in favor? Aye. So moved. Well, looks like lunch. So we'll take about half hour, 40 minutes.